8, 7, 6, 5. Tried to hold us back, to hold us, tried to hold us back.
We will be here forever. Do you understand?
Hey, it's Shan here. This week I catch up with Sean Mussett. Sean is affectionately known by his friends as Gravel Burns, legendary Australian skateboarder, originally from Coffs Harbour and also Newcastle, Australia. Old vert skater from way back in the day. We're talking back in the day, 70s, OG of Australian skateboarding. And he sits down for a long conversation about his life, music, art. He's designed graphics for skateboards, been the frontman of punk bands, and skateboarded his whole life. Sean is very open about sharing about how he lost the sight in his right eye as a little baby. And, an amazing skateboarder, like he says, with one-eyed skateboarder. It's really inspiring, actually. And he's an educator as well of students that are behaviourally challenged. And we talk about our views on education as well. So we go deep on a bunch of stuff, but we do talk a lot about skateboarding. So for you skate nerds out there, you'll definitely get your fix in this episode. We're joined by past guest, skate historian, journalist, article writer, photographer, librarian. Mr. Jim Turvey sits in to add his 2 cents and probably bring some fact-checking to some of the stuff we discuss, sort of. But yeah, Jim's just such a rad vibe. I love having him around. And he's also a very, very close friend of Sean. So, you know, the vibe between the two is just epic. I love that. And hey, listen, while you get a chance, go over and follow The Good Push. Past guest Nathan Keeley will be riding his skateboard unassisted, pushing all the way from Port Macquarie to Newcastle. It's over 300 kilometres and he's raising awareness in order to prevent suicide and raising funds for awesome initiative Talk to Me Bro. So follow him on Instagram, The Good Push or Nathan Keeley, and donate to the GoFundMe he has running at the moment. It's a good cause. There you go. All right.
Destined to rock for eons, time doesn't exist. Shut those cataracts, capture the virtualist. Now, let's get back to what makes things seem forever, whether it's unseen, unheard, or 16 again. Not a bother, fill this old man river, kill a fall, gives all coming up stream.
Really? With a clean cut?
No, that's me shaving yesterday. This is me shaving yesterday. I mean, with the clip, I don't.
Yeah.
I haven't shaved with a razor since I was like 17.
No, it feels weird when you do.
Or weddings. I think Luke O'Donnell's wedding, maybe.
Yeah.
Really? How old are your kids, your eldest kid?
My own son is 25.
Wow.
Just about 24, turning 25.
Dude, is that a trip?
Yep. It's amazing.
Why?
Why is it a trip?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just because in my head I'm 25. Like that's the age I am. Like he's about to turn my go-to age. So it's like, how can that be? And he doesn't. Like he is like me, but he doesn't look like me. So it's kind of like this. He's massive, like he's Jim's height probably, and another 5 kilos. And it's just it's the weirdest thing when like I said before, I see him all the time. We go to the pub, and it's just like you're my mate, but you're not. You're my kid. It's the weirdest thing, really is.
If you had to go back to 25-year-old Sean, what would you say to him?
To 25-year-old Sean, oh, it'll be okay. It's going to be fine. I wouldn't go back and say. Maybe I'd say, buy more houses in Mayfield. Probably. I feel like that would have been a really good bit of advice.
Why is that popping off? Is it? I don't even know.
No, well, I had a couple, and they were like I had like 3 houses with a combined mortgage of less than $200,000. So, if I had 10. I wouldn't be working for the Department of Education anymore.
Really?
Probably.
Real estate mogul.
That was my partner. My son's mum was really into the idea of that, like buy property, not develop it, but just hang on to it and get more, and that's your retirement plan. And we had a pretty good go at it, to be honest.
What year was that you were purchasing property in Newcastle?
90. I think we bought our first house in 94. By 96, we had 3 houses.
No.
And it was just dumb. It was just dumb.
Dumb?
Like, as in dumb luck. Like, I remember I didn't have a job. I came back from Port Macquarie to go to uni. I finished uni, and my grandfather he'd sort of done pretty well in business, and he had like this bit of money for each grandchild, and it was like 20 grand or something, which was like $1 million in the 90s. And every grandkid could access this money. And I remember saying to my dad, do you reckon I could talk to Grandpa about getting this money for a house deposit? And he's like, sure, but, you don't have a job. And I can't go to the bank and say, I've got this $20,000. Can you give me the other 50 just for fun? He said, it just didn't work anyway. So I said, I can get a job, but can I get the money off Grandpa? And he goes, sure. So I sorted that out, and the week later I had a job. 2 weeks later I had a house. And my dad still makes his head spin when he thinks about it. It was just it's the funniest thing.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
There'll be 20-year-olds listening to this in complete disbelief with their current housing market.
Well, yeah.
My son's one of them.
Yeah.
I was going to ask that, yeah. I mean, how do you feel about the future of your son in that respect?
Look, he lives with his mum, and he's really happy. He loves living in Islington. It's like, the village that it takes to raise a kid kind of place. And he'll his life is really good. Like, he's happy. That's the main thing. He's really happy. He's got a great bunch of friends. And I just don't. I think it doesn't exist anymore. That go out and work hard and make a living and buy a house, and it's not something it's not in his DNA, sort of thing. I reckon I've unstructured that from him.
Yeah, what do you think Australians are so attached to that dream? It's a really big part of our culture.
Yeah, I think colonialism's a massive part of that. Like, get in and own something, be the guy that owns the place, and it's just shouldn't. It's not sustainable. Obviously, we've proven that.
But you're not worried about your son in that respect. Maybe never being able to get into the market alone and things like that.
No, he's got 2 parents that own properties, and one day they'll die. Or 2 days they'll die, hopefully. It'd be terrible for him if they both died on the same day. But you know what I mean? I think down the track he'll get into the market. I mean, it's not impossible. Some of his mates have come out of high school. They're the same age as him, a couple of them. They've bought houses. He doesn't want to live more than 500 metres away from Slingtown. So, yeah.
It's interesting, reflecting on your life, there's an element of being a misfit for a lot of that time. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, you picked up on that really quickly. I've always felt like, I feel like when I was 9 months old, I rubbed some dirt into my eye, and it was like a reverse superpower thing. It's like, your Superman comes to Earth and he's got superpowers because he came from another place. Well, I reversed superpowered myself and rubbed a bacteria into my eye and then took out my right eye so it's blind. So I feel like from my very earliest cognizance that I've felt different. Like, day 1 at school was so bad that I didn't want to do day 2, and I walked into the principal's office in my underpants because Mum couldn't get me dressed. And yeah, misfit is definitely something I relate to very, very closely.
Wow. Well, let's start tracking from the 9 months old. That's a bit early, but yeah, I mean, how would you, if you reflect on your childhood, that time from, say, 0 to 10? How would you reflect on that time? Did you have positive memories mainly, or was it a difficult era?
Mainly positive. That's a really good time frame, 0 to 10, because I lived in Sydney. I was born in Sydney, and I was the first grandchild. So you can, middle class white Australian people. my dad's the oldest son, my grandfather's the oldest son, I'm the oldest son, away we go. So I was very, not spoiled, but, there was lots of love and affection. My parents were amazing parents. And it really, I didn't have any kind of feeling of not belonging until the first day of school. And I got really badly harassed about my eye. And it was, not trauma's a big word these days, but wasn't like traumatizing, but it just made me go, why are you people such wankers?
Like, can we delve into it a little bit? Was it like teasing or questioning, curiosity by other kids?
Oh, I think all of those things. I'm sure Jim's heard this story. I did a sticker and a T-shirt for the ramp rage, and I was drawing the picture, and I ended up with the guy was doing a boneless on a ramp, and I ended up with the head to do last, which I've since worked out is a bad idea. So I drew this Coles shopping bag, paper bag, over his head because I didn't want to stuff up the drawing because it was way before computers. So I just spent like hours doing this drawing, and I'm like drew a Coles shopping bag on his head and with one eye cut out. And when my mum saw that sticker, she's like, "Oh, that's really weird. Why did you do that?" And I told her the reason, which is what I've just told you. And she said, "Oh, there's this really weird story where when you were in primary school, you went to school on a school bus one day with a paper bag on your head because you were with one eye cut out because the kids on the bus teased you so much about your eye." And she said, "I don't know how many times you did it, but a lady who was a friend of ours got on the bus back when like randoms could get on school buses. I don't know if that's still a thing. And she told Mum, and Mum said, "Oh, she took the bag off me and consoled me," and I don't know how long that lasted, but somewhere in my subliminal memory was this. So when I showed that sticker to Mum, she got kind of really upset, which is sad. And but yeah, it must have been in there somewhere where I went to school with a paper bag on my head with one eye cut out because of the hassles I was getting going to school.
Did it affect your ability to learn? I'm sure it did, but can you share that with people?
Look, it's doctors and optometrists. It's not like I'm a miracle or anything, but they're really kind of confused about my capacity because it must have been right at a time when all of that, the muscles and reflexes and stuff had developed, and so my eye sort of still moves. It's not too sort of laggy or anything like that, but I don't know any different. It's like I was 9 months old. All I remember was walking into tables when I was learning to walk, just walking into the corner of tables all the time. On my right-hand side, I constantly went to my auntie's wedding as a page boy with this massive black eye because I used to walk into the corner of tables all the time when I was like 2 and 3. But no, I just don't, like people say, "Oh, how do you drive?" And I don't know any different. How do you skate? I don't know any different. When I think about it, it would obviously be better if that wasn't the case, obviously.
Yeah.
We could do backside airs for a start.
I was going to say, like, you can do backside airs.
I can, but I hate them because I used to hang up all the time because I'd like really struggle to know when to let go. So, and I've said this to Jim before, once I learned indie airs, I never did another backside air.
What about like backside 50-50s?
Yeah, that's a sort of a feel thing. And I reckon more than doing the trick, it messes with my style because I have to turn my head. Like I can't stand up as square as I'd like to stand. Okay. So I've got to turn my head to see kind of where my board and the coping is rather than look along the coping.
Oh, so your front foot comes into view.
Yeah, I need to look down and see what's going on, yeah. Wow. But I reckon it's just a style thing more than...
But academically, you're able to...
No, my good eye works really well. My brain works really well, which is handy.
You kept up...
Yeah, I didn't have. I was
able to get the concepts.
I was really good at school, and I didn't have any trouble. I didn't like it so much, particularly high school. But I was pretty smart.
Yeah, like fast forwarding to now, like what prompted you to become a teacher?
I met a guy who just trained to be a primary school teacher, and he said, "Oh, they're looking for." That cliche. Oh, they're looking for blokes to teach in primary schools, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm sick of doing what I'm doing, so I'll do that. And I also, my son was about to start school, and I just thought the best way I can help him do what he has to do is be there on the inside and know what they're doing and know what they're not doing and help him. That was my biggest motivation.
That's so fucking rad.
Yeah, it worked out pretty good. Did.
That's like a rad dad move.
Yeah. Well, you get it's a good job. The conditions are good. It's a tough job, but it really paid off. Like having school holidays with your kid for their whole life is the best thing you can possibly do. It's not like, oh, where are we going to send the kid? You're just with him all the time, and it made our relationship really much stronger. I think that I had all those holidays with him.
Yeah, right. Did you go straight from high school to university and then teaching, or did you have like a period of?
No, I went. I dropped out of high school. I got kicked out of high school in year 11, and famously, my mum and dad just see it so differently to me. But I famously went away for a little while with Gary Nowell up the coast skating up to the Gold Coast, and which was like the best possible thing you can do for your skateboarding is to go skateboard every day in heaps of different terrain with one of the best transition skaters the country's ever had, like old school. And he's a great guy too. We surfed and skated and hung out. Would I have been 18? I don't think I would have been 18. He was like 23 or 4. My parents just flat out said no. And I said, well, I kind of got my own money and I'm not at school and this is what I want to do. And I remember very clearly my dad saying very quietly to me, I don't want you to do this, but I understand that I can't stop you doing it. And it was like a real moment. It was like, oh, okay, cool. Okay, well, that's what I'm going to do then. Off I went. So I went back to high school, to another high school, and did year 11 and 12, and then came down here to go to uni in 1985.
So that was Coffs Harbour that you were in prior to coming to Newcastle?
Yep.
And what age did you move to Coffs Harbour from Sydney?
I think 9. I think it was 74. I was turning 10.
And so did you start skateboarding in Coffs Harbour?
I did.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. I not heaps long after we moved there, we used to go because my grandparents lived in Sydney. We used to come back down all the time, and my brother and I found these 2 skateboards of my uncle's in my grandfather's shed, and they were just like literally Stone Age skateboards. They were just so old. They were 50s, like what they call clay wheels. They weren't.
I was going to say, clay.
Yeah, they weren't clay wheels, but that's what they call clay wheels.
They weren't urethane.
I don't even think urethane was invented then.
Like
when I found them, yeah, it was like, it would have been, I suppose urethane was early, wasn't it? Like 76, I think, was mainstream urethane. But yeah, these were from the late 50s, early 60s, these skateboards.
And what was the vibe like in Coffs? Was it just like surfers wanting to cruise around on skateboards to get to the beach and things like that?
There was a slightly older generation that were maybe 2 years older than us that were like the first wave guys, like Bain Superflex, surfy, driveway guys, and we came in sort of on the back of them stopping. So that we'd seen guys on skateboards, but by the time we were skating, there wasn't anyone on a skateboard in Coffs Harbour, and my brother and I just jumped on it really quickly after we found these skateboards, and my dad bought us. We actually came down here to Ray Richards, bought a couple of like Bain-ish, how they used to make their own decks in there, and they were the raddest boards, but they had the Chicago trucks and Cadillac wheels and open bearings and the whole on these Ray Richards Bain Superflex copy decks. Yeah, right. We had a couple of those, and then I started getting skateboard magazines. My dad was it's the coolest thing. I can't even imagine. He worked for what was Child Welfare then, Docs DCJ now. He worked for them for his whole life, and it's not like we didn't have any money, inverted commas. So for him to just go and splurge on these skateboards for us was amazing. And then he said, you can get 2 magazines a month from the newsagents on an account. It's just like, ka-ching, it's like the weirdest thing. And yes, I was just into skateboards. I think Skateboarder magazine, my first copy was 1978.
Wow. Just for context, how old were you roughly?
So 13.
13.
13 in 78, yeah.
Wow.
Is that right? Yes, that's right.
Do you think he saw the value? You said before that, you felt like a misfit from a young age. Do you think he saw the value in you finding something that like almost was meant to be, and that's why he was so supportive, and that's why, he wanted you to have the magazines as well to kind of have access to that subculture?
It's really hard for me to objectively say that now. I answer that objectively because I feel like that must have been it. He's an amazing guy. He's way more intuitive than he's expressive. So I think maybe he just went, okay, well, you're into this stuff. You're buying them anyway. It's costing you your paper run money. Everyone benefits if I just sort it out at the end of the month. But yeah, supportive is the key word. He was just absolutely incredible for my skateboarding. He'd take my brother and I. Well, we'd all go to Sydney, obviously, on family trips. But he'd take my brother and I after my grandmother died. He'd just chuck us in the car on Friday night, drive us to Sydney. He'd go and see my grandfather and check on him, and we'd just go skate North Ryde the whole weekend, get back in the car Sunday Arvo, go home again. It's like a 10-hour drive, I reckon it would have been back then. Wow. Surely, easily, 10 hours, yeah.
There's no mega freeway.
No, you had the freeway, Hawkesbury River and that sort of thing, but everything else was just the Pacific Highway. Yeah. And he used to, every weekends, he'd take us up to this really horrible little dish bowl up at Junction Hill near Grafton, and just me and my mates. And on a Sunday Arvo, he'd go off to church, come back, say, do you want to go up to Grafton? Yeah, sure. We'd rally a couple of mates, and he'd drive us up there. That was sort of an hour and a half. We sit in the car and read the Herald, take some pictures, get back in the car at 4 in the afternoon, drive us home again. Wow. It's insane.
You just triggered a memory, actually. I remember my mum, it's like 1989, and there was a demo on at Fairfield mini ramps. It was the vert ramp and the mini ramps. You probably remember those. And I remember, all my friends caught the train up, but I missed the train to go with them. And I remember she drove me from Nowra, and at the time it was like almost 3 hours, and just drove me all the way to Fairfield. And I got there, and I'm like, oh, I'm kind of embarrassed that you're here, Mum. And she's like, okay, I'll just leave you then. And then left me with my friends so I could catch the train back with them. And then she just drove all the way back. So she just did 6 hours, 3 hours, and then turned straight around.
Yeah,
I get emotional, actually.
Yeah, I know. I feel like if you've been parented like that, it just is a blueprint for getting it right. It really is.
It's good to hear.
Yeah, I feel like that. It's just like there was so much support and love and just a feeling of family in our house. And my dad and mum, they're both really into family. And I think that just sets you up for really ingraining that. It's not like a conscious thing, but you just know how important it is when you bring your own kids up that they've got that connection.
You mentioned your brother earlier. How much younger is he than you?
About 18 months.
Now, in a lot of stories, when I ask you a lot of questions when we're hanging out, you often reference your brother. He seems like he's a really big and important part of your childhood and kind of skateboarding for you as well. Do you think that bond was made tighter as well? I know I don't want to keep kind of going back to that misfit thing that you're talking about, but if you were having a hard time at school and you did feel like you weren't fitting in, and particularly with skateboarding not being the most popular thing in the world during that period too, do you think that made yours and your brother's bond maybe stronger as well?
Yeah, we had this ditch that we used to skate over on the Pacific Highway, and it was just like a drain. We called it the drain, and it was next to the service station. It's probably about 4 foot deep. It was like a beautiful, it was stupid when we found it. we're like, this is insane. It's like your own skate park. It had different types of surfaces. It had obstacles. It was smooth. It had a tiny little curve at the bottom where it met the flat bottom. The flat bottom wasn't dead flat, so that you could sort of pump through it. It was insane. And we skated that like every day for years until the skate park in Coffs Harbour was built, which was, I don't know, 79 or 80 or something like that. And my brother and I, we'd come home, get on our bikes, or we'd just run from our place to this ditch and we'd just session it. He sent me some photos of it, of our like little crew the other day doing this. Like, it's like Charlie's Angels thing. We're all like standing on our tails, peace signs, really bad scoops and Captain Lightfoot shoes. It was anyway. I think that thing that we did, because he played rugby league. He was really like, I wouldn't say I was jealous of him because he's batshit crazy, but he just looked. My partner saw a photo of him the other day, and she goes, "Oh, okay, now I get it. Like, he looks like a freaking movie star."
What do you mean movie star?
Well, he looked like Robert Redford.
He's a hunk.
Oh,
Yeah, he was gorgeous.
handsome.
The chicks, beautiful.
man.
Like one of my 57,000 girlfriends over the years. Like this girl I went out with, first time she met him, she's like, and this is like roundabout Thelma and Louise. She's like, he looks like Brad Pitt. It's like, he does. That's it. Robert Redford, Brad Pitt, blue eyes, surfy hair, great cheekbones. I was so jealous of that stuff. But he played rugby league, so I played football. He played rugby league. I wasn't allowed to play rugby league, thank goodness, because of my eye. My dad was really concerned about that. So I grew up playing football and he played rugby league, so we didn't have that connection. But once we started surfing and skating, we did that stuff right through, probably separated a little bit early high school, but in the late primary school, early high school days, we were just inseparable on skateboards and surfboards.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah, and he's still we communicate almost every day over the interweb, and he lives in New Zealand. He's just. We can get on the phone and just be like pissing ourselves laughing almost immediately from, just because we have this kind of shared language that we grew up with.
Oh, there's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
Okay, is he still good looking?
Well, I don't know how to answer that question. He's okay.
I'll reframe it. Are you still jealous of his looks?
Not jealous of his looks. He's currently running this thing. He sent a picture. The other day where he's at his hair. He goes to his hairdresser. He lives on the West Coast, but his hairdresser's on the East Coast. So he goes over to see his kids, goes and gets his hair cut, does all his sort of business. And he sends a picture of him getting his hair cut, and I'm just replied, he missed a bit. He's growing this massive mullet thing off the back of his head, but the front of his bald, so all of the front of his head's all shaved, and he's just got this cat sitting on the back of his head. Oh,
really? Like a legit mullet?
It's so funny. So yeah, I know. I'm not throwing myself under that bus. I love him to bits.
You win, man. You win the good looks competition.
Did he keep skating?
He still
as
skates.
He got older. Yeah,
yeah. He throws himself around like he. There's heaps, New Zealand, there's parks everywhere. He used to skate in Christchurch a bit. He'll always send me a video if he goes skating. But he's still got a board. It's probably still the same board. He's probably still got that old fart board. I'm not saying.
Oh, right, yeah.
I'm not saying he definitely still has that board. He might be one of the other ones I sent him, but he's still got all the boards he rides are just boards that I give him and he keeps them for decades and rides them.
So if we just sort of track the chronology a little bit, if you don't mind, I always like to do that just to put things in context. So obviously you found these surfy skatey boards that may or may not have clay wheels, and then you found more rideable boards, the Bain boards, did you say?
Well, they were we got these ones from Ray Richards that were like Bain Superflex. Okay. Basically that. And fiberglass, whatever that is, 5 inches.
So you could actually you could turn them, they rolled better.
Yeah, had urethane wheels.
Wheels,
okay.
Yeah. So when was the first time you got a proper I guess, more modern day skateboard that was, usable on ramps and transition? Or the ditch?
Yeah, it's just so funny when you think about the. Yeah, I know. I do remember. It's when you think about this stuff, it's just so weird. And like my friends, we had a sporting supply shop in Coffs Harbour. It's the only place you could get skateboards, and the only skateboards you could get were Edwards DHD, and my friends got together for probably my 13th birthday. And threw in and got me one of those DHD, like sort of, the taper kick kind of looking thing with the stringers through it. Mm-hmm. Edwards, I think actually it was just DHD. And they got me one of those, and I had like Edwards trucks and some Aussie wheels. And that was the first, this is like I can drive over anything on this thing. It was the best, getting off a fiberglass board with open bearings onto one of those. It's just like...
Where were you skating it?
In the ditch, and we lived across the road from a Catholic school, and they had this really cool driveway. There's a church up the road that had another really cool, really steep driveway that went out onto this horrible road called Valley Street that we used to bomb, and it was just my brother just annihilated himself on that one day, skinned himself. But yeah, you'd skate this driveway, and it was really good to learn tight control, because if you didn't hit a turn, or you came out of there a little bit too straight, you were out on Valley Street going faster than you wanted to be on an inappropriate skateboard, and you didn't last long. If you made it to the grass, you were really, really lucky. Yeah, but yeah, driveways. The ditch was amazing. I feel like we just learned to skate in that ditch because it like kick turns.
That's exactly what John Gray said. Mm. You know, where were you getting your inspo from?
Well,
skateboard.
I don't want to jump on Johnny's coattails, as fancy as they are, but it was the same sort of thing.
So you're saying you did the first kick turn?
I'm telling you right now, yeah, 100%. No, it was only when I listened to that, to Johnny saying that, I'm like, yeah, how the hell did we know what to do? You get to the top of the thing. I reflected on it thinking it must have been a surfing influence things, because we surfed and we saw people surfing all the time. Right. You get to the top of the wave, you turn around, you come back down. Yeah. You get to the bottom of the wave, you carve off the bottom, you go back up. Mm. I'm guessing that's how we knew what to do.
That's it.
Yeah.
And if you've never seen it done before, technically it's an NBD.
You're right. It had never even occurred to me before until I listened to John say that the other day, and I'm like, yeah, that's mental. I used to ollie up onto this PMG box, street ollie out of the ditch onto a PMG box, do a like a Telstra box, sorry,
box. Like an electrical box.
Yeah, it's like that. So I should have said Telstra box. And it sat up one end of the drain, and it was probably, that high. I'm putting my hands up to show 30 centimetres out of the drain up near the top. And so if you clipped your tail going up the bank, you'd land on a rock and roll on top of this box and rock back in. And so I invented street ollies and street rock and rolls when I was 13.
That's insane.
Well, I wanted to do a rock and roll. It was the only place in the ditch that you could rock your board out.
But you'd heard of it, or you'd seen it?
No, I'd seen pictures of rock and rolls.
Seen a picture of rock and roll. Okay. So you just improvised it?
Yeah, and so because I was probably 2 years into Skateboarder magazine by then, so I was Doug Saladino and board slides were already a thing. Eddie Gilker is doing frontside rocks already. But so I knew what a rock and roll looked like in a still photo, but. Yeah, so you just clip your tail going up the wall, land on top of this box, do a rock and roll, rock back in, shuffle your feet, shoulder charge the bottom 57,000 times on your way. But it was just when I thought about what John said the other day, I'm like, yep, that's really, really weird. How did we know what to do? You just improvise, you adapt, your terrain is what it is, and that's skateboard. It's always been skateboarding. Your terrain is what it is. It's hard for kids, young people, even you kids, to understand. He says, looking at Jim.
I'm 41.
Yeah, it's hard to understand. 47. Yeah, right. So it's hard to understand
41,
that.
Jim. Sorry, keep going.
Skateboarding was just skateboarding. It didn't have subgroups, or it was just skateboarding. You had a skateboard and you were a skateboarder. And if you rode to the shops, if you rode in a ditch, if you rode on a ramp or whatever it was, you were just skateboarding. And that's how I grew up.
Wow. That creativity, man. You know, where else in your life has it been manifested? Sorry, Jim, you're going to say something then. Yeah, is it? I mean, it nurtures creativity. You know, it really did. You know, like, I want to do this, I've got to improvise this and whatever. So where else in your life has that creativity manifested?
Absolutely everywhere. It's
Give
and
us
I
an
feel
This is right.
I started you like again through Skateboarder magazine 79, 80, the punk thing started to happen. And so you had the Santa Cruz guys like Olsen, Dwayne Peters, Alba, those guys. You know, slightly later, like all the Bones Brigade guys were not so much Tommy Guerrero probably, but the Cab, Hawk's got exactly the same taste in music as me. All those guys were into punk, and I found that through Skateboarder magazine, and I'd watch Olsen and Dwayne Peters particularly just do their own thing, do their own shit, and I started making shirts and doing things to my shoes. Wasn't really allowed to do too much with my hair, which is a shame. I got right into that when I came to Newcastle. When I went to uni, I was dyed it and got a mohawk semi-immediately. But yeah, I reckon it was I think it was in me, and it just needed some sort of little flame to flicker and go, you this is your thing, you can do this. This is these people. Like, and I was, I don't remember ever getting really badly hassled, apart from the cops one night in Coffs Harbour. But when I was growing up, when I first started doing my own sort of punk thing, I mean, it was a pretty piss weak version, but I don't remember really getting hassled. I was just Sean the skateboarder who did his own thing and wore weird clothes, and like I'd wear pajamas skating and odd socks. You know, it sounds so weird and like so watered down now, but in Coffs Harbour in 1978, you know, a guy with half a pajama shirt screen printed with checkers and the back of it saying Devo and odd socks, and you know, it just like they would have been like, what is going on here? Where's our world going? What's going to happen with our youth? You know, and I had a very, very close, who's still a very close friend. I call her my oldest friend. I don't mean that she's older, but my mum's best friend's daughter, and she was really into music and really into punk. And I'd go to Sydney and hang out with her. It was so random. I don't know why my parents let me do it, but I'd go to Sydney and just stay with her and her dad for like a week. And we were like 15 years old, going to pubs in Neutral Bay and Mossman watching punk music. Like, first band I ever saw was Tex Deadly and the Dum Dums, which was Tex Perkins and half of the Johnnies in a pub in Mossman. And actually, my brother was there that night, and we all got him. We were all dressed up, and he was like surfy, and he looked about 12 because he was about 12. And they said, "You guys are fine. He can't come in." "Oh, can we get him something to drink?" "Sure, you can get him something to drink, but he has to drink outside." It's like, he's probably 14. We would have been nearly 16, I reckon. But yeah, and so I just sort of got into that feeling of being connected to that punk world that I saw in the skateboard magazines.
Dude, this is interesting. How old were you when what was your first band you played in?
First band I played in was called the Boneless Ones, with my mate Mike Cosatini and his brother Paul, and they had a mate called Wayne who lived in their street. So they were like this three-piece that played U2 songs like quite well, actually, considering their age, and they just wanted someone to be a singer. And Cos said, "Oh, you know, why don't you be a singer? You can be the front guy, surely." I couldn't sing for shit, like actually, but I could frontman. Once I got over that feeling of, holy shit, this is terrifying. The first, I reckon, 3 gigs I did, which were all in just in our house in Cameron Street in Hamilton, I wore this like camouflage mesh hat thing like Mick Jones wears in the Rock the Casbah clip, and that was just so that I was like, so no one could see how extremely terrified I was.
Dude.
So that was the boneless one. That was like 1985.
85. Wow. Like as a frontman and who felt like they couldn't sing.
Oh, no, I can't sing. Like, I still sing.
You must have improved over the years.
I reckon probably. Yes, I'm sure I did. Like, yes, I'm sure I've improved. I think about what I'm doing now, whereas before it was just a performance and it was like, didn't really matter so much what I was singing.
You're screaming a lot?
A lot of screaming, yeah. Yeah, the next band so that band that I was in called the Boneless Ones, they transitioned into a band called Bark, and it was the same three guys, and they had a guy called Carl Richardson who sang like incredibly, like really. He was even more terrified of singing than me. They'd organise busking gigs, just him and Mike would go and busk to build up his confidence, and he wouldn't even show up for that. But they turned into quite a successful, like, Newcastle 80s band. They had a few singles and stuff.
Dude.
Yeah, and then then Cos got me into this sort of little unit he was working with some guys from high school called Dissection Committee, and I was in that band for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, rad.
Yeah, that was sick.
Had some interviews in skateboarding magazines as Dissection Committee.
Apparently, yeah.
What do you mean apparently?
Well,
Jim
said, no, I'm straight edge, man.
Are you really?
No, not. I mean,
I've got the physical evidence of these interviews.
If Jen says it's there, it's there.
Like, well, you just don't remember.
No, I do. He just keeps telling me this stuff, and I go, "Oh, really? Okay, if you say so."
He plays it. He's too chilled out. He doesn't want to, he doesn't want to play into his own mythos.
Interesting.
So I've got to do it for him.
That's why we need you, Jim. That's why we need Jim.
Mythos, is that something you like order? Is that food?
Yeah, it's a kind of kebab.
Greek restaurant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, so how did you two meet?
Oh, can I
tell me that?
Can I
story.
go back to before we met? Right.
Yeah.
At Newcastle Skate Park when the half pipe went in 1996. It was that ramp. I don't know if you ever saw it. The flat bottom wasn't very long for its height.
The one on the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it.
Ratio of transition to flat bottom. It's kind of scary to skate.
So it was a short flat bottom.
Yeah. It was really fast, especially when it had the original like coating on it before it had various surfaces. But I would have been in year 8 and this guy turned up that my friends and I would call Undie Head. And Undie Head, we thought Undie Head was like now this wasn't a diss. We thought he was really cool, but we also thought he was a little bit unapproachable. And we thought he was like 40 or something. He was probably 28. But it was just that age thing back then. So, I remember this guy at the skate park telling me he was 23 and I was thinking, wow, how can he still skate?
You're an old man, yeah.
But this guy turned up in a bandana, kind of like maybe just like a tank top, not dressed full 80s, like not mid 80s, maybe 1990 punk look. And he was just ripping that ramp, skating super fast. And we'd just be skating the ledge or something, or the wedge or something at Newcastle Park. And we'd say, Undie Head's up on the ramp, let's go watch. And it was Sean. But I didn't know Sean had been a sponsored skateboarder. We knew some of his friends had been. So Anthony Simmons, for example, Simo, he used to work at PD's, Pacific Dreams, a surf shop. And we all kind of knew that he used to get stuff from like Cooter Lions and Universal and things. So we kind of assumed that Sean had that background, but we didn't know because of the people he was with. But a lot of the time he was also by himself. But there was kind of a bit of, a myth about Undie Head. And
so because of the bandana.
The bandana looked like no one wore, in 1996, no one was wearing a bandana. This is before the Tony Trujillo thing of like the early 2000s.
Yeah. Well, he wore more like a headband, but I know what like the look
with it pulled back almost like Peter Andre would have been running at the time, kind of thing,
like a pirate vibe.
Yeah, and
he's getting a photo up. I love it.
And I think it was even the same pattern as the undies, like the.
But Can I just clarify? You weren't saying this to his face because you were scared.
No.
You were low key scared of him as well.
Not scared in like as in he seemed scary, as in
Oh, that's a sick look. That's a sick photo.
yeah, totally. He looked like he rode for Alva.
Yeah, he does. Like
that's-
actually, that
and-
photo, he kind of looks like a slightly taller Alva.
And like that's what we would even say. We would be like, man, I wonder if that guy like rode for Alva or something back in the day. You know, back in the day would have been 4 years beforehand as well. But time seemed a lot like a lot longer back then.
I want that photo.
So fast forward into the 2000s, and we used to set up these ledges at the netball courts to skate. And some older guys started coming and setting up like slalom, like cones. And now I don't mean like slalom, like as in just mucking around, like learning to skate. I mean really good slalom, as in like good style, being able to pump from the hips, building momentum, like what tic tac is supposed to be but not when little kids do it.
Without ticking or
Proper,
tacking, just carving it.
Just generating speed from your hips essentially and going really fast and good tight turns. And one of them was Sean. And we started, I put two and two together. Like that's Andy Head. Andy Head's base. Andy Head's still skating. He's still ripping. This is now like 10 years later, but it seems like, seems like 20 years.
So what have you been
Andy
in
Head's back.
What?
Andy Head is back.
And you've been in contact for 10, you'd seen him around for 10 years before
but
you
I
actually
hadn't made
met.
contact, all right? Even then, I said hello to him a couple of times, but not proper contact.
Yeah.
Then when I started working at a library, this woman, Lisa, who's a really good friend of mine that I worked with, and she's Sean's age, her and her husband were friends with Sean. And she said, my friend Sean used to be a sponsored skateboarder. Now I was in my mid-20s at this stage. And he's my age. And I straight away knew who she was talking about because by then I'd figured out that his name was Sean. I'd figured out that he had been sponsored and all that stuff. I'd done a bit of stalking. And and then I think, did she? I don't know. I think she said something to you maybe that she worked with a guy that was a skateboarder. But somehow then the next time we saw each other, I think I just started talking to you, right?
I already had a crush on you.
Oh, right.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I just saw all these things just happen. And then so one day we just started talking, right?
Yeah.
Like it was like...
I think that was kind of around about the time I started going out with my Lisa. Who was
with Lisa.
Also a very good friend of yours. And I think that connection was, I'd be like, oh, that guy's so cool. I love that guy. She goes, well, Barney. And I'm like, what, you know that guy? And she's like,
that's right.
Yeah, Barney. And I'm like, why do you call him Barney? Isn't his name Jim? He's like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Barney Rubble Hat.
Yep.
And very, very soon. I remember sitting in suspension one day before it was called Slingtown. Let's cut to the chase. And
Suspension.
Suspension Cafe.
Okay.
And now it's called Slingtown.
All right. Just for those that aren't familiar.
Yeah. And you guys were all sitting. I was sitting in the window with Marcel, and there was you and Nash, and you were the ones I remember, and a couple of other guys. Your guys sitting out the front, like shooting the shit, laughing, just covered in tattoos. And I just said to Marcel, "That's the cool crew. Those are the cool guys."
No, I wish.
No, you guys are. But he said, "Oh, do you know them?" I said, "Oh, I know that guy because." I knew Nash because he was Jeffrey and Lisa, mate. Anyway, blah blah. But I said I want to know Jim. He's like the coolest guy. He's so funny.
Jim?
And that is not true.
Yeah, anyway, then one day we started talking.
Yeah, I think we got numbers and we met up for like a date. We went and hung out. We went
Had
to
a coffee,
suspension and had
yeah.
a coffee.
No way.
But I can remember one day
coffee?
seeing you.
Not a beer.
No, we went and had a coffee. It was really civilized. But yeah, we went and had a...
It's the first time anyone's ever done a sound effect on this podcast. That's right.
He's creative. So you asked him about that
I
before.
can tell, man. It's manifesting everywhere.
But I'll tell you this, and we need to go back to Sean, but I will tell you this, that I remember when I became friends with him messaging one of my friends in Sydney that I grew up skating with and saying, you'll never guess who I went and hung out with today. And I said I went and hung out with Andy Head.
Yeah.
His real name's Sean.
Is it his real name or is it something else?
It could be Gravel Burns.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah. And I had all this inside goss, you know, I confirmed heaps of things. I was like, he was getting stuff from like Universal for a while, and I could kind of confirm all these things. He was riding for PDs, and I think he was getting Aussie boards at one stage, like really early on, and I could confirm all these things that I kind of hypothesized. We'd made up a little bit of a lore about him because the other guys we knew because they'd been around, like Simo, and then John Bogarts, I suppose, was part of their crew. All those guys kind of Sean had been in magazines a lot as well during the 80s as well. But I suppose people remembered John's board, or Simo worked at the surf shop, so people kind of knew a bit of his lore, like Lore. Yeah. But Sean was a bit more mysterious. In the early 90s too, I think he'd been in the UK for a while. So when we all came on the scene, he wasn't there as much, whereas we knew who Bogarts was, we knew who Kenny Gibbons was, we knew who all those guys were, whereas Sean maybe had stepped out of the spotlight for a couple of years before reappearing as Undy Head.
Undy Head. How do you
in
feel,
my mind.
How do you feel about Undy, that name?
There's only 4 people that called him that, probably. Like, not.
One of those people now is like a 12-year-old girl. Hey, Undy Head. It's so cute. No, when he first told me, I'm like, oh, and he goes, no, we meant it like respectfully and affectionately. It's like, yeah, I get it, like whatever. I was a person with a mythos called Undy Head. And we're like, how cool is that? Guys, younger skaters look at you and go, well, where is that guy from, man? Look at that guy. He's Undy Head. He just comes out of nowhere and then goes as quick as he came. That, how funny is that?
I thought he was Spanish or something for real because his hair was so jet black as well. Yeah. I was like, can he even speak English?
Yeah.
I practice my words.
Yeah, it was like, that photo, like it was a lot darker, surprisingly. It's crazy.
Surprisingly, 30 years ago, how much darker
yeah. But he did. He looked like he rode for Alva or something. I think that's the best context to put
sick. In. Yeah, when skating started to get a bit more serious, like you got out of the ditch, like and started skating ramps. And where was your first actual ramp you skated? Do you remember that day?
We used to go to, again, my dad would take us to Sydney and we skated Skate City, which is just, like, it just blew my mind.
Where was that?
That was at Manly.
Okay.
And it was all the fiberglass Wesnell stuff, the 2/4, the bowl and the half pipe. And nothing had flat bottom. Well, there was flat bottom between the quarter pipes, but they were offset. They were like a weird in it. They weren't like a half pipe. They were 2/4 pipes that were at weird angles. And it was right in the walkway, so you couldn't really get anything going. But anyway, and I was like 13 or 12 or something. So, but that was in magazines like Wedge and Adrian Jones, Johnny McGrath. They were there all the time. I don't remember ever going there and not seeing, if not all 3 of those guys, if I was there on the weekend, at least one of them. I mean, I'm sure, speaking of law, I'm sure Johnny McGrath lived underneath the half pipe for a while or under the bowl. I'm sure Wedge just told me that. And he was like,
it's crazy.
16, he just hitchhiked with Wedge, like just jumped in Wedge's car basically. Wedge just says, skateboarding's happening in Sydney, not Melbourne, so I'm going to move to Sydney. No way. And Johnny's like, yeah, cool, hang on, I'll just get my bag. And they just jumped in. He just jumped in. He's like a kid. It's like, I'm sure that's like, you're going to jail these days if something like that happens in your life.
So raw.
Yeah, really, really cool. But Wedge is like, if you're going to jump in anyone's car, he's the guy. He's just so sensible and intelligent, and not to mention, like Wedge, I've said this to people over the years, Wedge and Adrian and Johnny are like the holy trinity, not that I'm religious, but the holy trinity of Australian skateboarding. They're the people that I remember being the guys from.
Because that was one of my questions, like who were some crew back then that were just, the ones that were blowing your mind and you were looking up to? So it was those.
Well, because I lived in Coffs Harbour, the only guys I saw were in the magazines, and that was those 3 guys.
Yeah.
Like that.
Like AJ, Johnny and...
Yeah, Adrian Ariel Jones and Wedge Francis and Johnny McGrath, and there's just classic photos etched into my brain of those guys skating, like Johnny's tail tap with his hair flying over at Albany, and Wedge just frontside airing across the bowl in Manly, and Errol doing, Biff doing backside ollies.
Biff Murdoch.
Yeah, and like those were the guys, and they were, what are they, 4 years older than me-ish, 4 or 5 years older than me, and they were just the crew. Like, and some of them were arseholes, like I'm not not going to throw Fox under the bus, but
John Fox?
yeah, but
I just
some of them were
threw him
just
under the bus.
Yeah, some of them were that were just so nasty to the little kid. Like I was just a little kid. I was like 12 or 13. I just wanted to skate, and you just couldn't get a go. And then Wedge would just sort of say, "Oh, you want to go, kid? Yeah, thanks." And then he'd just stand in the way while you rolled into the half pipe.
But dude, I still think there's something to be said for that grom abuse. Like I sustained it as well. I remember turning up to Alloa Bowl, and I was like 11 and and I was tiny when I was 11. I'm still a short guy, but. And I got some dude just screaming, "Get off the fucking island!" And then some dude was calling me a slimer. It's like, "Get off the island, you slimer!" And all these years later, I still remember it clear as day. But I swear it builds resilience. Like I feel like kids are too soft these days.
Well, soft. Maybe more adulty people are a little bit more respectful. I don't know, but absolutely didn't do me any harm at all because they were gods. You know, like you don't get in front of them. You don't ride there.
Exactly.
You know, you earn that go. So
now we get yelled at by scooters to get out of the way.
Yeah.
Were you on your DHD then?
No, I was really lucky around about that time. My DHD broke. It was sad. But it must have been like it would have been a birthday or Christmas, probably birthday, and my DHD broke. So Dad took me to Skateboard World in Burwood, and Adrian was there. So that was like, God. I walked up and Adrian Jones was standing, like he's just a kid. What was I? He would have been 17 years old or something, like maybe not even. But he was Adrian Jones. The magazines were already calling him Adrian Ariel Jones. And I'd seen him skating at Skate City, and he happened to be the guy that served me, and he sold me my first American Pro deck, which was a Santa Cruz Red Dot Steve Olson, which is just the most, like it was, like the fact that it was just sitting on the wall was too crazy.
Yeah.
Like how is that just sitting on the wall? That's like, it's life size, it's made of wood. What weird world is this?
And that was your dream board too, wasn't it?
So my dream board, yeah. Like I would have, if I'd have, I mean, I went in just wanting a skateboard.
Yeah.
So, but the fact that board was there on the wall, and I could just say, can I get that one? Can I actually get that? Can you get that skateboard down and I buy it and take it home? And yeah.
Would he have been riding for Ace at the time?
Jim.
I guess. What, Skateboard World? And yeah, I actually don't know. You would know better than me. You've troweled the magazine world.
I was just wondering if there was any kind of temptation to buy something local. Cause
yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. And the DHD too.
I think because the deck would have cost, I don't know, like a lot of money. He steered me towards Ramp Rippers, which were DHD. Pink, which was fine. Pink was punk.
Yep.
And Errol said, these are a bit cheaper and they're really good wheels. So he steered me towards those, and they were really good wheels, like great quality urethane. Lasted forever. I've still got them, but they lasted forever. They were really good wheels. But yeah, I like all that product and who rode, all of that stuff was just beyond me, you know. Like even... I didn't really even pay attention in the magazines who was like obviously Alva rode for Alva, and the Santa Cruz guys were my they were the punk guys. But it was more about the type of skater you wanted to be. You know, like if you weren't going to ride, even back then, I wasn't going to get a Veriflex deck.
Yeah, it was a tribal thing too, wasn't it?
It kind of was. Yeah.
Yeah, like which tribe you align with.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned John Fox's name, which to me is a very interesting character in Australian skate history because he was the editor of a very prolific magazine, Skate and Life, back in the day. Did you have a building desire to get in that magazine and be on the right side of him?
I was always on the right side of Fox, apart from when I was when the Punk Element design, the Ped boys were at Skate City. That was like, and it was just them being punk.
Yeah.
You know, if you just like it's dissing little kids is the same as spitting at a band. You know, it's just sort of pointless and dumb, but it's what you did. But I never, ever had a problem with Fox. He was a rad guy right through the 80s and 90s. And when I sort of used to see him at Bondi in the Bowlerama days, he's a really, really nice guy. That's why I said I'm just taking the piss. They were just narky, you know, punk kids just marking their territory.
But it was also very reflective of Australian society and culture in that time anyway. I just think it was translated in skateboarding. It was happening in the surf. It was happening at the footy ground.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said before, I've always felt like wary of that sort of thing, you know.
What sort of thing?
That just where kids are nasty and aggressive, and you know, I got bullied in primary school until I got some friends. Then we moved to Coffs Harbour and the whole thing started all over again. So I was always really wary of...
Even being in a punk band, like, you didn't want to like live up to the persona of the front man. Punk.
No, I was much more theatrical. I was more, I don't know, who like Jello Biafra. Like, you know, I'm just theatrical, putting on a show, I wasn't angry or violent or I just used to like to say fun, you know, I had a microphone and I like to say funny things and make the crowd laugh and just to entertain. It was like I wasn't an angry punk guy. Okay. It was way more theatre than that. You know, like New York Dolls or something, you know. It was like, we did drag a bit, but way more New York Dolls than Exploited, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, gotcha. Wow, man.
But by the time Skating Life would have hit the shelves, that's 88. You were kind of pretty well established. Like you were already pretty well established in the Australian scene anyway. What was, if we go back a little bit, and sorry if I keep dragging it back, but
bro, go.
There is one thing that I wanted to bring up because it's pretty unique and it's a sign of the times and stuff too. So you were being flowed Aussie boards pretty early on through Tim Dorr, is that correct?
Yeah, and it's funny when I was listening to John's thing the other day, Coffs got a commercial skate park. I was in high school, definitely in high school, maybe year 8, so say 14. And it had the pro shop and had hire boards and stuff. And Tim came up and stocked the pro shop with Aussie boards, and they were our hire boards. And then he came back, I don't know, some amount of time later, later that year with the Aussie team, and did a demo, and that was like Danny Van, Dwayne Heckader, Chris Briggs, 4 of them. I can't remember who the other one was off the top. Anyway, but, you know, Danny Van stuck in my mind because I'm still really good friends with Danny. But, and then Tim, who I wouldn't have known Tim. He looked like a professor. He still does look a bit. Anyway, he just said to the guy, because I was working at the skate shop, and he said to the guy, Roger, who ran the place, he said, who's your local guy? And Roger said, Sean's he's probably the best skater here. And he said, I want to hook him up with some T-shirts and a board and stuff, and he can be like our advertisement for Aussie. And that's just what happened. It didn't really dawn on me until ages later that was like pretty cool, getting free skateboards. Like I don't know how long it lasted, but maybe, you know, I got a couple of free skateboards and I wore their T-shirt, and it was a nice kind of feeling of someone saying, "Oh yeah, Sean's our best skater," kind of thing.
And you're sponsored now.
Well, it's yeah. So I never
that was
thought
a big thing, man. Like, I'm sponsored. Everyone wanted to be sponsored.
I reckon at that point, I just didn't even understand the concept of that. Like, it just didn't even dawn on me that was a thing. Like, guys rode for guys rode for certain teams, and it was more like a team thing. I just didn't understand that that's kind of, and it's not sponsored. Like they gave me, sponsored to me is, you know, you're getting your travel expenses paid, and you're getting all your boards, and you're getting all, you know, you're kitted out, all of that stuff. And this is like, I got a couple of boards floated in a T-shirt, and I had to, when I was skating, I wore the T-shirt, and that was like what inverted commas sponsorship looked like in whenever that was, 1980.
So like, because I want to slowly build up to the point where skateboarding went from vert, and then vert died in the early 90s, and then it became heavily street. And you probably remember that big change. It's a pretty monumental change in the history of the art. But leading up to that, what vert ramps were you mainly skating on the regular, whether it be in Sydney or Newcastle or Coffs?
Yeah, when I moved, I moved down here in 85, and I met my mate Mike down at the old Bar Beach quarter pipe, and they were about to build a ramp in this guy's backyard in Cooks Hill, and they took me. Cos just took me there straight away and said, "Oh, this is what's happening," and it's like, man, it was this funny little ramp with all just the most, you know, it's like everyone's first backyard half pipe. It was just like Johnny was saying the other day, it's like you just steal whatever you could get. And like, I don't remember if ours had street signs on it, but it was that sort of thing. But it never really got going. I don't even think it ever got skated. It was just one of those, like a pipe dream. But then there was this 1985, there was like an Easter get-together at Port Macquarie Peppermint Park, and I didn't go because I went back to Coffs to see my parents, but pretty much everybody else did. There were so many guys went up to, because the park was going to get closed, so many guys went up and skated, and it just fueled. It was like the first like flame of skateboarding, of our age group skateboarders just going, actually this shit is real, there's heaps of us, let's get it going. You know, the Bones Brigade video had just hit, and that was just insanely important in our generation of skating, because for the first time ever, apart from the odd, you know, occasional clip in a surfing movie or whatever, the first time ever you saw guys in motion, and you could go and you could understand the kinetics of what they were doing, and you just went, and it was just so incredible. I could still send shivers up my spine thinking about sitting at Johnny Bogart's parents' place in the little rumpus room downstairs, just going, stop, pause, rewind. Stop, pause, rewind. You know, like watching those parts of Tony Hawk, just like, how the fuck?
What are we talking, like Future Primitive?
This was the first. This was
the Bones Brigade
video show. And like I know, I mean, it's such a cliche, but I just so gelled with Lance's part in that, because he was. It was so approachable. Like he was goofy, but he was so, like, I was watching something yesterday of like one of the 80s Texas comps, and he is so rad. Like that, and there's just so many parts, like flip parts of his own thing in over the last decade. He's such a good skater, and he puts himself down so much. But he's like the Velvet Underground of 80s skateboarding. He, like, everybody who saw Lance bought a skateboard. It's like hardly anyone bought the Velvet Underground album, but everyone who did started a band, and that's what Lance did for skateboarding in the 80s. He was like, everyone went, man, I can do that. I can tube right under a tree. I can do a board slide on a train rail, you know. It's like, I don't know if I want to jump off a roof, but I probably could. And and then you've got Hawk. Like, you think about that. That's the first Bones Brigade in 84, 85. The stuff he did in that bowl, in his part, like, you'd win a comp. You did that run now, you'd still win a comp. It hasn't, not a single 540 or spin. It was just insane. And, like, that's way beyond us. But I can do what Cab's doing. I can do what Lance is doing. and it just got us going. Really, really got us going. We went, okay, build a ramp. We got to get ourselves off the ground and build a ramp.
So it was Lance Mountain.
It's his fault.
It was Lance Mountain.
Bloody Lance Mountain's fault.
He was the spark, man.
Yeah.
He ignited that.
Yeah, I think so. And so, we built the ramp in Ridge Street in 86. And we could just finish now and say, and the rest is history. But
That ramp is like of that era of 1986 in Australian skateboarding culture. I mean, every magazine from that period has mention of the Mereweather ramp at least, and the crew. Or if there's ever like a kind of a scene check in any magazine, and photos and little mentions of it were being mentioned right up until 1989 as well. In all of the, there's about 5 or 6 magazines during that period by that time coming and going. And you see mentions of them. Like I think there's even like a blurb that says at some stage in about the end of 88 that says a word on the street is that the Mereweather ramp is going to be back up and running again soon. And, it was 2.5 years beforehand.
Wow. And that was the velodrome.
Legendary.
That was the cockroach ramp. It was the same ramp. It was the same transitions, new timber, but the same transitions and the same.
Do you want to tell people about the 1988 Steel City ramp rage and what that was?
It was like the nuts and bolts of it, like completely selfishly, the nuts and bolts of it was we just wanted to have a vert ramp again. And so to do that, we organised this contest. We had this like a youth worker set up with who sort of had some kind of connection to the council. She seemed legit. She got us forming an association. We used to have these meetings, and the whole thing was quite tragic and horrible, and in a smoke-filled room in her place in Hamilton South. But we organised ourselves together and decided, let's have a contest. It's the bicentenary, we'll call it, and that's how you get it through council. You make this big deal about it being connected to something, blah, blah, blah. But basically, we just wanted to build a ramp again. So we still had the transition pieces. I'm pretty sure they must have been at Coz's dad's concrete place. And so my mate Andrew Gordon and I just remember it. You might remember when the contest was, but I just remember it being really freaking cold. We used to get up every morning about 6. He was like a boss. I ditched my whole life for like a month. And I didn't go to uni. My girlfriend didn't know where I was. I just slept on his lounge, and he'd get me up at 6 a.m, and we'd go to the velodrome, he lived in Broadmeadow, so it was like just down the road. And we'd work every single minute of the lighted day building this ramp, pretty much just the two of us. And Roy Lee from Pacific Dreams, he gave us trucks and trailers and money for wood, and just like he was just so incredibly generous. And it was all on the back of this contest that we actually had almost no interest in at all in running the contest. We wanted our friends to come and skate with us. So it ended up being the 1988 bicentennial ramp rage, and it was a big deal. Like it actually, heaps and heaps of skaters came, and lots of younger skaters came. There were a couple of different divisions, and it was a really, really cool experience. Cockroach threw in some money, and we painted the ramp blue and spray painted cockroaches all over it, which was sort of, it was so cool. It looked awesome. It looked amazing. It was slippery as it was just like glass for the first few days until the paint stopped flaking.
I wish I had my skateboard here because I've just got some cockroach wheels.
How good are they?
Yeah, and they've got the cockroaches sprayed all over them like the old days.
Back in the day, yeah.
But yeah, anyway, keep going because I'm envisioning exactly what you're saying with that ramp.
Yeah. And we ran the contest without really knowing what we were doing. And I'm talking guys from everywhere. Like they just came from everywhere, Gold Coast, Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney. So everyone who was a skater, I've got no idea how we got the word out. Like I guess we called friends and sent letters. I don't know, really got no idea. Like I guess there was an ad in the magazine. I don't know. Because Skateboard Australia was up and running then. Anyway, heaps of people turned up. It was a contest. It was rad. The lady who was connected to the council, who was our kind of I don't know, the person who galvanised us, we assume it was her, nicked all the money. So we ended up with nothing.
Like full extortion. No shit.
It's just 1 minute. We had hundreds and hundreds of dollars in a box, and the next minute we don't have a box or hundreds and hundreds. It was just it was the weirdest thing. It was just, and then at the end of the day, we had this gig in Mereweather High School Hall, which is just like, my son went to Mereweather High, and when I tell him, he's seen pictures, and he's just like, that's just insane. Like, I've been up there on the stage shaking principal's hands, and you were up there being a punk on the same stage when your guitarist was banging his guitar on the ground of the place where the principal was standing. It's so funny.
The skateboarders from all over the country as well. I mean, that competition, to put it into perspective, probably made up, and without exaggeration, probably 15% of every magazine for the rest of the year, as far as either whether it's, I mean, there's obviously just the coverage of the comps wasn't that big, but then in every like little photo gallery, because we're talking during the period there's Skateboard Australia, Skate and Life, Slam, Perfect Transition still a thing, 540 still. So there's a lot of Australian magazines that, you know, on magazines, like on the newsagent shelves at the time, and all of them had coverage. Oh, Speed Wheels as well. Sorry to go back. The one Chad Ford edited, great magazine, in my opinion, kind of under, not given the respect that it was. Because it was, maybe people thought it was corny, but it had some great photos of the rampage as well.
Do you think it was just the timing? The timing was just so spot on as what everyone needed at the time.
Yeah, I reckon it was pre the councils getting on board with facilities. So, like I said, it literally was just so we had somewhere to skate.
Yeah.
And we skated that, right? We skated it, I don't know, maybe a month. I don't know how long it was up for. And, of course, you know, some guys got in that weren't skaters and graffitied around the velodrome, and the velodrome people who were happy to have the ramp there because it was just in the middle of the velodrome where there's just blank space. Yeah. They didn't want people coming in and messing with their shit, so they just said, "Oh, yeah, sorry, boys, you're going to have to pull that down." So, you know, it was. But by then, like we were going to Mona Vale, Curl Park, Belrose. There was some really good sort of, you know, it's a hassle. I used to go. Andrew would come around on his motorbike again. I've got memories of it just being cold all the time, but he'd come around on his motorbike and we'd just chuck bags and stuff on the back of this, I don't know, 550 Honda and drive to Sydney in the freezing cold.
No shit.
We get it like
getting doubled.
Yeah, doubled on a motorbike with 2 skateboards and 2 like pad bags.
From Newcastle to Sydney, like 2.5 2 hours.
Yeah. And we'd do that 3 times a week. And I remember one day we were coming back and it started raining, and we'd been skating like all day, and we'd come back in the dark and it started raining, so we pulled up under one of those under an overpass, and I couldn't get off. He needed to get off and do a piss, and I could not. My legs would not move. I was just
that
locked,
cold.
and it was just freezing, and I was cramped, and it was just like I was locked on the back of this motorbike, and he ended up just throwing himself on the ground because otherwise he was going to piss his pants. and I sort of rolled off like Commando rolled off the bike, and I just picture myself lying, you know, like an Evel Knievel character from like your action figure where you can't actually change the shape of their knees and hips.
They're stuck in motorbike riding position. Yeah.
That was me. I was just like on the ground in motorbike riding position. My knees and hips have always been so bad, just full of arthritis from a really early age. And I just remember just getting stuck, and he's like, "You got to get off my man, dude. I can't move." It's just me.
Oh my god, dude.
Anyway, so yeah, that was it was just one of those perfect storm moments, and it just got that crew together, and then it was sort of like, you know, again, way before phones and internet, everyone was just connected again, and so we'd go to the places, and you know, like we had pretty good connection with Johnny Gray and Finn and Danny Van. They used to come up and skate Ridge Street. And like that was like I knew all of those guys. I knew of all of those guys, but we used to spend weekend after weekend. They'd come up, they'd go to all our parties, they'd steal our girlfriends, drink all our beer, tear our ramp to shreds. Absolute, just like incredible they are mythological figures, those guys, and Finn in particular. But we got really close with that particular crew. Errol, he'd come up. Someone had a camper van or something, and it was literally like the proverbial busload of skate punks just turned up at this house in Mereweather, pile out. They'd come with the funniest guys too. They'd pile out, they'd come in, they wouldn't pad up, they'd just skate for like half an hour, because it was sort of, by the time they got up, it was probably close to midday. They'd skate for half an hour, warm their legs up, then they'd all skate down to the beaches, pound, Finn particularly, just pound like 4 schooners, and come back and just absolutely go off, just like rip that ramp a new one. And you just like, and they weren't much older, like a couple of years older, but I was like, you can't ride a skateboard after drinking beer. That's just, who does that? We don't do that in Newcastle. Anyway, it was kind of funny, but Finn was just a lunatic. I've got so many funny memories of him. We went on a road trip with Finn to Darren Burford's comp up the Gold Coast, and we used to hire, because we travel. You'd have to hire a car to go to Melbourne for the comps down there. You'd go to Sydney, Darren Burford's comp, Easter comp. Who holds a contest at Easter? It always rains. Anyway, we went up. We hired this Falcon. Finn turned up at the train station when I was living in Hamilton. He turned up. We jumped in the car. There were 4 or 5 of us in this Falcon, and we broke down at Kew. And can't remember what happened. I didn't know anything about cars at the time, but we broke down at Kew anyway. We pull in the servo. There's a pub across the road. That's Finn. He's just gone. So I'm like, shit, I better go with Finn, because he was like an ad for Mambo. He just looked like a skate punk. He was like do you know where Kew is? Up near Port Macquarie on the highway? Yeah. There's a pub. Yeah, it's like a rural, like out at mid-coast. Anyway, we walk in, it's Friday night, and there's game of footy on, and he walks in. He's already drunk, I don't know, half a slab of beer between Newcastle and Kew. Walks in, loud as a bomb, just goes, all right, who are you fucking going for? And they all look at him, and he goes, because I'm going for the other team. And I'm like, like, dude, you can't, they will kill you and us and our car and all of the things. And anyway, we got to the Gold Coast, and it just pissed down rain the whole weekend, and we skated where we could skate. And we went to a skate shop. Finn bought these knee pads, and he wanted to test his knee pads. And there was this poor, unwitting family trying to have a picnic in the rain, a couple of kids and like just mum and dad, and wanted to have a picnic under this picnic shelter across the road from our hotel room. And Finn, it's just terrible to think about it now. He ran across the road straight at this table and knee slid across their picnic, dropped his legs off the other side and just ran away. And it's just like, it was so funny at the time. It was just so fucking punk. But I think about it now and I just go, oh, that was so unkind. And then that night, one of our friends was epileptic. He had an epileptic fit because he'd forgotten to take his medications. Finn's like, he's literally doing those ones on the ground, and Finn jams a board onto his feet and he's going, write it down, Wayne, write it down. And then Sunday, the sun comes out. We go over to Darren Burford's ramp. He hasn't slept. I was very innocent and naive in terms of street drugs and stuff, but he was probably just like charging on gear and pills and stuff and beer. And I knew he was drinking beer. We get over to Darren Burford's. The sun came out. We had like 2 hours to skate before we had to drive back, and he learned backside airs. Like, he learned late grab backside airs that day, and he hadn't slept. He hadn't been sober for 48 hours. And I just remember he was on this like fluoro green Hosoi board, and I'm sure there's photos of it. But he just started popping his backside airs, and it's a foot out, and it's 2 foot out, and it's 3. Then he's doing 6 foot backside airs on this, like, I think it was about an 8 foot transition ramp, Darren Burford's ramp. And they were just like we'd seen Lee Ralph by that point, but it was like that. It was just like, he just went, oh, okay, well, I've just figured out how to do backside airs. And we're like, what? None of it. I could hardly even stand up. I was so tired. I was so broken. Wow. And anyway, that's Finn. He was, and so that was our connection with those Sydney guys. They came up all the time, skated Ridge Street. then they introduced us to more of the other crew of Sydney guys like Springy and Warren Archer. There was just so many guys, so many Lux. And then we'd go to
Mick Mulhall.
Yeah, Mick Mulhall.
Yep.
What? No.
Keep going.
And then we go to the Melbourne comps and we'd meet like Tony Hallam and Johnny McGrath were another level. Like they were pro skaters. Like the rest of us were skateboarders. Like even like in respect for everyone from that generation in Sydney, no one could do what Johnny McGrath did, and really close behind him was Tony Hallam. And I don't know what that was about, whether it was just the drive they had or the facilities they had or the kind of competitiveness of who, like the
combined with some natural talent.
Yeah, and I mean Johnny McGrath was just a freak of nature. He is still he's just the most when you see those weird movies where you look into someone's mind and everything's mathematical algorithms. I'm sure that's
like
how he sees.
mind.
Yeah, I'm sure that's how he sees life. He just sees the pattern in everything, and he just skates so incredibly beautifully, and he always has been able to do that.
Yeah, there's a few of them in skateboarding.
Yeah.
I love it. Can I ask you about Ramp Riot? We talked about that earlier. You skated in Ramp Riot as well?
Yeah, the first one. I
remember the one in Melbourne. It was on TV even, I think.
Yeah, they I don't know how many they had. Definitely two.
Yeah.
But we went down for the first one, and it was just like it was one of those like we want to skate a vert ramp. So everyone get in these hired Falcons again, drive the Hume Highway.
I think it was big for me because I would have been like 12 or something like that, and it was on mainstream TV. I've actually covered it.
Yeah, right.
And I just remember going, oh my God, like skateboarding's on TV, like real TV, because this is when we only had like 3 channels, 3 to 5 channels.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like on like Channel 9. So,
yeah. Well, those hardcore guys were hardcore. Like they were there, they were in it for.
In terms of promoting it,
building a business, building an industry, and Globe turned out all right. They make a buck out of it. But that they got it. They were our age, and they just knew how to do that stuff. They got pros out from America. They were in with all the distributors. They had sponsorships.
Entrepreneurs,
unbelievable. Like
the Hill brothers.
Yeah.
And Hills Hoist. You know that now.
Yeah,
their dad created the Hills Hoist.
Yeah,
it's insane.
When I did find that out, it did start making a bit more sense that they probably had a bit of business acumen behind them before they became skateboarders. But for whatever you want to say about them, they bought 87, 88, 89, whatever it was. They brought pro skateboarding to Australia, and we got to see that stuff, and they took it around the country, and good on them for that.
Yeah. Did you go to one of the Sydney Opera House?
Yeah, I went. I'm sure I would have. I can't think of any reason why I didn't go to any demos or. But it like 80.
Was that a ramp ride at Sydney Opera House? I can't remember.
I don't remember either.
If you're out there, the one where Christian Horseway skated and like it's in front of the Opera House.
Yeah, I think that was just a demo.
It was just a demo, wasn't it?
Yeah, probably was.
Memory's gone.
Yeah. But again, it's like none. I just wanted to skateboard ride, and all of that stuff is so like I don't have that. I don't have that circus mentality for it. I was just a skater. I just went to where the skateboarding was, and if something was happening, then good. If I was allowed to skate, even better. Yeah. So that's kind of my approach to those things. I do remember being on the platform at Torquay, like with Craig Johnson and Lee was there. See, that was funny because
Tony Hawk was there too.
Yeah.
Oh,
maybe not.
No, was that
Christian was?
I don't think Tony was in the first
Christian
one.
was.
Anyway,
there was some some amazing skaters, but we were kind of accepted as part of the crew because Lee basically lived in my lounge room for 6 or 8 months when he was up here living with Colin Brown. Him and Gregor used to come over and play Coz's guitar and
Gregor Rankin,
and they'd come drink tea, play guitar. watch our videos, have their little funny in-jokes, and just be at our house all the time. So when we got to Torquay and you can just walk up and shake Lee's hand and give him a hug, and the other guys see you doing that, you're just part of the crew. And it's kind of I feel like it's my way of getting through life in general, is just to assimilate with that thing, and then you're instantly accepted. And I don't know whether it's a camouflage I have so that I don't feel out of place or something, but it's just like I've got no, like everyone, to me everyone's on the same plane, and heaps of people don't see it that way. Like a lot of people put people on the pedestal, and I don't see that. I don't. It's just, I don't think very many people in skateboarding would look back and think of themselves as worthy of being on a pedestal. And if they did, I think they'd be called on it pretty quick. And I think being able to access the rock stars of skateboarding on a one-to-one, like I skated that ramp with Lee every day for months and months and months, and he became one of the hugest Southern Hemisphere exports to skateboarding.
But
and
to you, it's just Lee.
This is just Lee.
Sleeping on the lounge.
He's a funny guy. He
Yeah.
does rad skateboarding. He's funny. He's pretty good on the guitar. Yeah.
Do you think you have a little bit of, and I mean, most of us do, but do you think you have a little bit of maybe imposter syndrome as well? Because during that period, I mean, when you talk about people being on different levels and you feeling like that you needed to assimilate to fit in, during that period you were, Al Tyndall started Skateboard Australia, which, you helped out with. You did a lot of the graphic design for, designed logos for, you designed graphics for skateboarding companies. You were doing your own art, studying art, performing in punk bands. You were skateboarding, and your skateboarding photos were ending up in skateboarding magazines as well. Do you think, looking back on it, if you were to step outside of yourself for a moment, that you were one of those people anyway and you didn't need to assimilate? That was you feeling that you were already one of those people, you were already there. I mean, you designed John Bogart's graphic, which is, his pro model for Bonza, which is, one of really iconic board. There's all these little things that people might not know about you that are actually these kind of like treasured little facts about our subculture that kind of help tie it all together as well. And it's always funny when I hear you say, trying to fit in, because to me, and take all my bias out of it as far as being one of your friends, you were one of those people. Yeah.
When you put it like that, I don't see it from there, because it's like you're in your own life, and I did it like I just wanted to be skateboarding, and it's I don't know, is it dumb luck? Is it you put yourself in a place where things can happen, and then they happen. So it's not like, oh man, that was lucky, wasn't it? No, well, I put myself in that place. And I was with these people, and I was part of that thing, and I put the effort in to do those things. So yeah, again, it's like I reckon you could ask that question of Lance, and he might say the same thing. Like I feel like it's just one of those things where it's just your life and you're living it, and these things happen.
Yeah.
And then you move on to the next thing, and the next thing happens.
It's interesting you keep saying that, because I watched the Heath Kirchart interview on the Tony Hawk podcast. Did you see that?
Yep.
I mean, for me, I know Heath Kirchart's a completely different era to what we're discussing, but he is iconic, really, let's face it, in terms of street skating. But he was just dumbfounded that he was even asked to be on the show, that anyone even references him as someone that was actually good at skateboarding. He just still could not believe it, because it was just, for him, just innate, I just want to skate, but never considered that he was actually good at it. And I really believe that it wasn't coming from that sort of semi-narcissistic sort of angle of like, oh, I'm just being humble about it, but I know I am. But he was just, I could see he was just like, no, I was average at best. Like, why do you even want to talk to me? I just got lucky. I was in the right place at the right time. That's why I got sponsored and things like that. So anyway.
And I think a lot of people I mean, I really think that there are people who skate and there are skateboarders, and that's, I think the people that do
Quote City.
the people that are still skateboarding when you're my age, you can't stop. You're not going to stop. It's not even a choice. It's not even something you contemplate.
That's what John Gray said. He still does inverts at 60 years old.
And that's it. Like, I go down there and I skate that bowl 3 times a week. It's a 10-foot, 11-foot concrete bowl. Yeah,
It's scary, dude.
And I feel like I can see it from here, but I can't. Nearly can.
Almost.
Yeah, it's just there. And I can't imagine not doing it. Like, I can't imagine sometimes if I'm running late to go meet my kid, I'll ride my skateboard down the street. It's just the thought of not doing it is like, it's not even a thing. It's like forgetting to breathe. You don't even think about breathing. You just breathe. And so it's the same as with skateboarding. I don't even think about stopping. It's just not even a thing. I just skate. I'm a skateboarder. And it's so interesting when you see. I really don't want to talk too much about the Olympics, but it's like the difference between being at Belco just recently and watching there's kids down there, and there's kids that are skating and they are phenomenal, but they're not skateboarders. They're athletes.
Stuntmen.
Yeah, almost. I used to think that they were, don't want to say anything about names, but that kid that used to come to Bar Beach and like train and was a phenomenal skateboarder, but just seemed to me that she just didn't know what skateboarding was. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
was that a parental influence, do you think?
Maybe,
if that's the person that you're talking about? Yeah.
It could be. It could be that. It's like there was a certain mindset. And look, don't get me wrong, just probably at a certain point there for a really small amount of time was the best girl skateboarder in the world.
Yeah, a complete phenomenon.
Yeah, but I just felt like just was doing tricks, didn't seem to know about what skateboarding was. And that sort of led into what I saw in the Olympics. And there were people who were skateboarders, like Poppy's a skateboarder. She's a skateboarder.
Yeah, completely.
And heaps of those girls, heaps of those people that I've skated with that were in the Olympics, they're just skateboarders who are so good that they get onto that stage. And there's some that will not be skateboarders when they're too old to be in the Olympics. I feel like that's a thing. It's in the future. I feel like that's a thing.
I'm stoked to give that perspective on the notice and the change in the culture shift that you've noticed over the years. I'm really, because I often think about Nyjah Houston. Like, I mean, he's just so phenomenal. He really is. There's no questioning that. But I was really surprised when he didn't win Skater of the Year. And it's. I've never been able to put my finger on why. Like, he does have a lot of haters and things like that, but literally maybe one of the best people to ever stand on a skateboard in the streets anyway. And I think maybe what you're saying is kind of summing it up. But I think that guy genuinely does love skating as well, but something is just not hitting people like Lance Mountain did when he first got on a skateboard. It's just something so authentic and pure about it. And I was the exact same with Lance Mountain. My first ever skateboard was a Bonite Powerwall Peralta Lance Mountain, and that's the reissue. Yeah, because I wish I kept the original, like everyone.
Yeah,
wishes.
right.
But you know what I mean. So it's just kind of summarising everything you were just saying. It's cool.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and we won't know. We won't know until the future. Yeah, it's.
But that's art, right? It's subjective to everyone.
Yeah.
Like, there may be people that do look at those skaters that we're mentioning and have a completely different, perspective on it, and that's okay too, right?
Yeah, of course it is. It's but if you're skating, you're a skater. But there's skateboarders and there's people who skate.
But is it motives? Like, does it come down to motives?
Could be that.
That's what I mean.
Could be that. Yeah.
Yeah, like you were saying, like you just wanted to be where the session was. Didn't care if it was a ramp ride or a skate comp. You just wanted to skate. So, I don't know. Or is there people going there who've been training the same line for the last month leading up to that.
Yeah. And I find it really interesting when I go to comps, but particularly bowl comps. I do a lot of commentating and stuff, and I see kids. You get three runs, best run counts, and they do the same run 3 times. And I just like, why would you do that? Like, yeah, okay, you might get, okay, you're doing it, but you're in that bowl. You've got other ways of doing that thing, and the judges notice that if you've changed it up, you've done something different, you've put yourself in a different place. And it's not a great example of what I'm talking about, but I just find that really odd. Like maybe it's because I probably couldn't do the same run 3 times in a row. I don't know. Because it's just where I find myself in the bowl at any given time, sort of a little bit haphazard. But when I'm watching and I'm commentating, and I'm like, yeah, you just did that run. Why don't you do a different run? Put that trick somewhere else in the bowl. Judges notice that stuff, and it's. I was talking to Jed McKenzie the other day, and it's that thing about like anti-judging, where you're not judging what they're doing, you're judging what they're not doing or where they're not doing it, and it's like he's a bit burned out on that sort of skating, and he's a phenomenal skateboarder. Like those kids that grew up in Bar Beach, George Richards, Marley Ray's still rad. He's only a kid. He's just amazing. Jed McKenzie, Jackson Bogarts, those guys, they grew up in that bowl, and it's a big concrete bowl, and they've turned into insane skateboarders. Yeah. But they've also they're Newcastle skateboarders. They're not just skateboarders. They're Newcastle skateboarders. So they've got this thing in their DNA that just goes a bit sideways with contests. Just subvert. We just don't do that, really. It's not really our thing. We're not competitive skateboarders. We're just skateboarders. Great community. Bring your kids grow up in a really good community when you're in Newcastle skateboarder skating in our parks. You're not gonna. It's gonna be pretty hard for you to be a competitive, like an actual competitive skateboarder. I mean, Jed could do it, but he doesn't want to do it. Yeah,
dude, his cover shot may be one of my favourite slam cover shots.
How good is that?
That's amazing.
It might be one of my favourite covers. I mean, you've skated Pizzy Bowl, obviously, but I know they've resurfaced it. But even with the resurface, that hip is fucking gnarly.
You don't go anywhere near that. Yeah.
So,
He's ridiculous. He's ridiculously
shout out
good.
to that.
Yeah.
That was a sick cover shot.
Yeah. And he's going about it. He's going about his, call it a career for want of a better word. He's going about being a skateboarder in exactly the right way. He's hanging out with the right people. He's skating the right places. He does it. He's such a humble guy.
More sustainable approach.
I feel like that. Yeah, absolutely. You're not going to be this month's flavour. You're just going to be a really rad skateboarder that people appreciate and respect. And that's kind of, I just feel like that's a newie thing.
Yeah. And there's longevity in that as well.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about Kieran Woolley, because I'm from the South Coast, and so is Kieran. But did you guys recently see his independent trucks part where he ollied off the roof into the tree trunk?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's pure skateboarder. Like, that's just as creative as it comes. Like, that he heard about it or he drove past and went, I wonder if there's a bit of a transition on that tree trunk. That's skatable.
You could do that.
So sick.
Yeah. And Kieran's another really good example. He used to come up here and skate. I mean, he still skates. He skated all the ABCs and lots of our local comps. He just had a sort of an attachment and affinity with our bowl. And he's just turned into absolutely incredible skateboarder, but he's still the raddest guy. Like, he's just so in touch with skateboarding, and the people he's around and the people he's with are the right kind of skateboarders. You know what I mean?
But don't you reckon he's one? I mean, he's doing it all though, like Olympics as well. You know what I mean? So he's like he's like a rare gem who has been able to juggle all of that and be super competitive, but then raw as they come.
Yeah.
He crosses boundaries.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is just absolutely incredible talent. Like, he's just such a good skateboarder, and he can put himself in all of those places. You know what I mean? Like, he can perform in the Olympics, And Keegan won the gold medal, but he's not Kieran. You know what I mean? Yeah. Keegan's a competitive athlete. He's always been that kid that, like, from being the tiniest little kid, you just can't even imagine how tiny he was the first time I saw him skate. And then now he's a gold medalist, but he's not Kieran.
But can I ask you though, when you were skating, say like the Mereweather ramp back in the day, was there ever conversations on the platform of like, oh, imagine if skating was in the Olympics one day? Come on, you must have. Everyone had those. You didn't ever have not even once.
Not even once.
Okay.
And I was asked this a few years ago, and it's just like, I love it if it brings more skateboarders to skateboarding and more facilities to skate on.
It has.
Then bring it on.
Yeah.
That's, for me, that's what it's about. It's about exposing the money people to skateboarding, and then getting more facilities. You know, I saw a feed today where Cessnock's nearly finished. Their park at Cessnock's nearly finished, and we've got how many parks you could, like, it's just insane the number of parks that we've got within 20 minutes of here.
Did you ever think you'd see that in your lifetime though?
I would not even dreamed of it.
Yeah, I was in
not
Sydney.
even dreamed of it.
Because I'm in Sydney a lot, and I was a few months ago, I had this one day where I skated like Sydney Park and then Glebe and then, what's that other park? Oh, it's something park. It's not Moore Park. Oh, I'm having a mental blank. And it's got that epic bowl with the marble coping. Oh, anyway, so I was just skated like 3 of the most amazing parks all in one day.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember just stopping going like, I never thought I'd see this in my lifetime.
Yeah.
But, and then I was like, well, how much of this can we thank the Olympics? Because it's now on the council's radar, and they're happy to put money in the budget for it. Like, it must be.
Yeah, well, it's in the mainstream. You know, it's like they're funding, and it's also, and I reckon Jim will cut in on this, because we were talking about it a couple of weeks ago about the kids just aren't into team sport. That's just not the same. You know, I don't know, what is it, Jim? Parents aren't into it, kids aren't into it. It's not our culture anymore so much. It's particularly in Newcastle, particularly like not in Newcastle, but on the coast. You know, you're surfing, you're skating, you're mountain biking. It's kind of like they're a solitary kind of. It's not a team sport, but it's a community that you're living in. And I think councils are like, oh, hang on a minute. We've got less people bugging us to build an oval, but we've got heaps of people bugging us to build a skate park. And so they weigh that's politics. That's what happens.
Yeah, yeah. We were talking about it the other day. I do think at some stage, and not that it's a competition, because everybody's pastime has its place as far as I'm concerned. I'm not anti-team sport necessarily or anything like that. It wasn't for me, and it wasn't something I was interested in or gravitated towards at all. But at some stage, when it becomes harder to fill spots on the cricket team or on the rugby league team, because every kid is either out in the surf or up at Glenrock on a mountain bike or down at the bowl or down at Civic on a skateboard or roller skating or whatever it is, kickboxing, MMA, any of that stuff, you know, any of the kind of solitary things. You need a competitor for those things, but they're still kind of like, there's a lot of intrinsic motivation. And it's like a solo thing when you're actually doing it. At some stage, the way it's going now, it seems like those pastimes are going to outweigh the team sports. And then the kind of allocation of the budgets, particularly in, you know, local council and stuff, is going to have to shift, where instead of the skate parks every now and then get a little bit of a budget for an upgrade or something like that, it will be, every 8 years we're going to have to get a new greenkeeper in at the, you know, in the oval, because there's 12 people that have decided to get a 6-on-6 like rugby league team.
Yeah.
Somehow, you know, they've managed to scrounge 12 people together out of, you know, population of 400,000.
Right, man, we're finally coming up.
Can I? You spoke about the generational shift before, Shan, with the Olympics and stuff. But Sean, you and I had a conversation once where you were talking about, you went to the UK. Correct me if I'm wrong, if I get the dates wrong. Is it 89, 1990?
1991.
1991. And you were skating the whole time while you're in the UK, but you said you kind of had your blinkers on, you're on your own little world doing your art and stuff. Can you kind of gave me this fantastic description of being in Sydney when you came back and describe your setup and what you were rocking and what you saw as contemporary skateboarders and how you felt. Because when you said it to me, it really struck me.
I'd have to put myself back in that place, but it started when I was in South Sea and we were skating at that park in South Sea, which is a really old, iconic park. And there was a younger generation of kids skating, and they all had they were doing that kind of rave look, the baggy pants and the
goofy boy.
Well, I don't, it's like probably how I feel about that is that I was out of my element, but I was still skateboarding the way that I skateboarded, and I was really lucky because I ran into a community of guys that lived and breathed that park, and they were local guys, and some of them lived in London and they came back for the weekends and stuff. But I was skating with guys my own age who'd skated that park their whole sort of skateboard life, and then also because I was there in the summer, they had one of those. They had the Shut Up and Skate comp, and so there were guys from the States, like heaps of the Zolak guys, and like Craig Johnson, I remember, and Steve Schneer, a few guys that came out. They had that Shut Up and Skate comp, and so it was really kind of still, my skateboarding was still relevant. But what I was watching the kids skating in the park, they were skating these weird little obstacles and this little street dish and stuff, and they all had their baggy pants on and their 45 mil wheels and. But I used to joke and say they were just urethane covered bearings, and I just could. I'm like, hang on a minute, what's going on here? You can't even, that skateboard doesn't even go. And then I came back and just with me being a vert skater, and I was trying to, I'd go to skate vert ramps and there's no one there. I go to Mona Vale and I kind of got bullied a bit by maybe some guys who were shit hot guys, local guys at the time, but I didn't know because they were a fair bit younger than me. And I just didn't get what was going on. I couldn't really hook into it. And then I came back to Newcastle. I came back from overseas, moved in with mum and dad because I had zero money, and I had minus money actually. I owed them a fair bit of money. Moved in with mum and dad in Port Macquarie for a year, and then I bravely ran away from there to go back to uni because that was the only sort of way I could escape, was to have a plan. So I decided to go back to uni, and I did that. And I moved back here in 93. When I came back here, there was no one skateboarding in my kind of realm. Like, you guys were all, was the park at the beach then?
No. So that wasn't until 1996. Yeah. 1995, sorry.
So I'd go skating. I'd skate Izzo Bowl, sometimes Elmore Vale Bowl, which was smoother but way scarier scene. I'd mostly skate Izzo Bowl, mostly on my own. I'd skate around, but none of my mates were skating. There was no guys my age weren't skating. Johnny, I don't even know where John was. Maybe he was still in Melbourne. I don't know. But there weren't people around skating. And then when the park down at the beach got built and that ramp got built, it sort of slowly started to make sense again. But there was a long time where I just couldn't find you guys were skating. Obviously you guys were street skating and doing your thing where you did it. But I didn't know anyone who was skating.
I think you told me a story about trying to go to get new trucks when you first got back to Sydney or something. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, and I couldn't get anything. What was it, 131s, 141s? You just couldn't get anything to fit a deck, and that's how I ended up with that old fart board, because it was the only board that fitted that I considered to be big enough to ride transition on. And
was that an Acme?
Yep.
And it was probably only 9 inches wide, right?
Yeah,
it even wasn't that big.
No,
comparatively,
and it was still a paddle pop shape.
Yeah.
But it was literally called the Old Fart, like an ironic name for this big board, and that was the only board I could find in a skate shop that looked anything like what I wanted to ride.
Old Fart with an E on the end, right? Fart, as in ye old time.
Yeah, ye oldie farty.
Yeah.
And what was I in 91, 93? What was I 30 nearly?
That's so funny.
It's outrageous, right?
You found some guys in the suburbs when you're skating around, though. You told me you ran into Captain and Ted and stuff
Yeah,
like
so
that.
that was really cool because Captain was living with his grandmother,
His grandmother, in Tides Hill,
over at Tides Hill, and so him and Ted used to come over and skate Izzo Bowl, and that was rad because they were a bit younger than me and they had new tricks, but they still liked my skating, and I really liked their skating. Like they were funny kids, and I had a car at this point, so we used to go to down to Rathmines and all the weird places out to I think we skated the bowl at Beresfield one day behind the pool there, and John knew places to go, and I had a car, so we kind of hooked up for probably a year or so. We used to do that.
Oh,
it was
fantastic.
good fun. Yeah. And that, but again, it's like how old's Captain? Like your age?
No, he's 9 years older than me.
Yeah, right. So what's that make him? 10 years younger than me?
No, he's not even 9 years. He's probably 7 years older. He's probably 48 this year, I think.
So about 10 years younger than me, and they were just little kids. Like Ted was actually a little kid.
Yeah.
They were tiny. They were just young kids, but they were really into skateboarding, and they were both really good skateboarders. And they were the only people I could find to skate with.
Yeah. Was Gordo around at that time? Did you ever skate with Gordo? I know he was here when he was at uni.
Yeah, he was around, but I didn't know him. And I used to, when the beach park opened up, I'd see him skating around, and then that's when I started seeing you guys again. That sort of reintroduced me to to newie skating, and like I think we were saying the other day, like Fletch used to skate that, Brad Pierce, and
Jamie Fletcher.
Yeah. Oh,
I used to love him.
Yeah, he used to skate that ramp. It just blew me away because I hadn't seen skating like that for years, and then I got back into it, and then he was like one of the first transition skaters I saw after I'd been away that just had all the new tricks, like the stuff he was doing. I didn't even know. Like Tony Hawk Pro Skater wasn't around then, but it was like that. I was like, "How you can't do that on a skateboard on a transition ramp? What? It's crazy."
Did you remember Jamie Fletcher from before you left to go overseas? Do you remember him from like Caves Beach and stuff?
He used to skate Caves Beach, and he used to come up and skate Camps Wharf when we had the ramp at Camps Wharf. And I knew who he was. He'd aged, like, what was that, 4 years? He'd aged 10 years in 4 years.
He lived really.
He did.
He lived hard and fast.
But at the end of the day, he was an insane skateboarder. Brad and like the Coxes who were unrelated, those guys were insane. There were just some really good, and I was so, gosh, it was so.
Yeah, how are you feeling?
Oh, it just gives me goosebumps thinking about it. It's like, oh, thank God, I thought skateboarding had died. It's like,
right.
Yeah, there was like nobody skateboarding, and it was just such a relief. Really early. Like when I first came back, say 93, we used to go down to, what's that? Is it Slam? Was that down at Tuggerah?
Yep.
Yeah, the first.
It was level 2.
Oh, was it Vertex? Was it a Vertex?
Vertex was it? Was it Tarrant Point?
It was Tarrant Point, but didn't they open the second one at Tuggerah? Or was that called something different?
No, it was level 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because there were two different locations, but they were like 200 metres apart.
Yeah, they were the two level 2s.
Yeah.
There was two different level 2s, and then it became Slam Factory.
Yeah, right.
Padstow was the other one.
Yeah, Vertex was at Padstow.
Yeah,
That's my old hood out that way.
Is it?
Panania,
I remember.
Padstow,
But when I found out about level 2, we'll call it. I always called it Slam, but and Andrew and I used to go down there and skate that, and that was just like, oh, thank goodness, there's a scene, there's facilities. You got to pay, you got to go, you got to bloody travel again. But
so you're skating the vert ramp there? Was there a vert ramp?
No, there wasn't. There was a kind of a, what was it, like a 7-foot bowl? Yeah, and a couple of different minis.
Okay.
And so funny, I was only talking to my partner Lisa about this yesterday. She said, "Why do you wear your watch on your left hand?" I was like, "Oh, it's the weirdest thing." Andrew and I, we'd skated the bowl for a couple of hours, and we got into this mini, and we just started skating. It's when like Switch was coming in, like it was
early
just
90s.
Yeah, it was so massive. Like it was just everything was called switch this and switch that, and I like, you know, whatever. This one, we'd skated the bowl for a couple of hours, and we didn't want to go. So we ended up skating like a 3 or 4 foot mini they had there, and we just skated it for like 2 hours, completely backwards. Like we did all our tricks. We're both goofy. We did all our tricks for 2 hours, natural foot. Like dropped in backwards, did rock everything. Like 50-50s, the whole thing. The thought of it now just like what was I thinking? Anyway, I got back in the car and I kept looking at my left hand to see what time, and I couldn't put my seatbelt on. I'm like reaching across the wrong side, and I went to wind up. No, this is honestly. I crossed the midline.
Your brain.
He'd recalibrated.
I crossed the midline of my brain, and everything had just gotten messed up. We did it. We were concentrating so hard. I couldn't wind the window down in his VW. I was so glad I wasn't driving, because I reckon I would have crashed. I feel like, and so from that day, a couple of days, I got sick of looking at my empty left wrist, so I changed hands and put my watch.
No way.
And I've been wearing it on. But it's so funny because the next time I went to Newey Park, I dropped in backwards. Just didn't even think about it. Just put the board there, dropped in as a natural footer. And
you should have kept doing that.
I know, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's like I should have kept doing inverts, and I should have kept doing lean tails. And like John Gray said, it was so inspiring. I'm going to go down and skate with those guys one Sunday.
You skate John's vert, right?
Yeah, real soon.
Dude, I want to come.
On a Sunday,
I want to come. Just do my one trick.
I'm sure it'll
drop in and rock the fakie.
Rock the fakie,
tail tap. Oh, actually, no, I can do a fakie ollie on vert.
There you go.
I used to be able to do fakie ollie stalefish grabs.
What?
Wow.
Over the coping.
Stalefish Pop-Tart.
Stalefish Pop-Tart.
Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah. You grab the other way, yeah. Could you do that?
I could do a Pop-Tart. I couldn't do I don't
like
think
a fakie Pop-Tart?
Yeah, like a Pop-Tart. Like you
Sick.
drop fakie, grab it like a frontside air.
Okay.
And then just let go and drop back in again. But that was called a Pop-Tart.
Okay.
Anyway, I got to the Newey ramp and just dropped in backwards, and it wasn't until I went up to whatever I was going to do the next trick, axle stall or a rock and roll or something. I'm like, hang on a minute, I'm going backwards. It did not even occur to me.
Hadn't worked out how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
Because I know this is a bit of a dark thing to bring up, but it came up the other day because that era when, vert died, and there's a lot of pro vert skaters struggling with that, for lack of a better term, transition to the new era. It came up on my feed the other day that Gator is due to be released from prison.
Oh, I was only thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, and I remember the day. I remember when the news, I remember when I was standing, I was in my friend's shed. He had a little mini ramp in his shed. It was like a little 3-foot mini he built. He's like, did you hear, Gator killed his girlfriend, And I'll never forget, it was like the first time as a kid, something like that was actually interesting to me because he was a skateboarder, and I used to worship him with all those other crew. And I must admit, ever since, which is what now, almost 30 years later, is that right?
Well, it'll have to be. Yeah.
Well, because he got a 25-year sentence, but then when he was due to get out, they appealed to keep him in longer. Yeah, and I was always like, I wonder how he's going. You know what I mean? He served his time. It's really heavy.
It's a thing.
How did it impact you guys?
Well, it's so weird because I was only thinking about it this afternoon because every year we have a Chaos Jam here in July, and I do a graphic for a shirt, and I just thought, it'd be so rad to do the Gator graphic because it's just so iconic that whatever you call that thing, the void thing.
Yeah,
but I just can't go there. It's just not. No, you can't. It's just not. I can't support. I don't want to remind people. It's a really weird timing that you say he's going to get out of jail because I thought, well, man, he must be. He's like my age. He's in jail and he's 60 and he's never seen anything of what's happened in the last 30 years. And it's like, well, you did a crime, you've gone to jail. It's that all of that stuff's horrid. It's horrid to even contemplate it. But for you to say that he's coming out, it was kind of, what was it? It was a physical incarnation of what happened in that little moment in time in skateboarding, and we didn't feel that because we were just kicking off. Those guys went from kings of the world, like Gator was the king of the world. He had the whole thing. He he was Tony and Christian joined together in a single person. He had the rock star thing of Christian and the incredible technical ability and style. He was just such a rad skater, I think it just sort of that moment in time, it's like the Altamont and the Rolling Stones. It's just like Hell's Angels have killed a hippie kid, Gator's killed his girlfriend. It's just like this is the death of something. It's something really important's just happened, and if you watch that Gator documentary, you can see him spiraling into or out of where he was, and we didn't feel that. I remember you saying that to John the other day, and it's like I didn't feel. I'd always struggled to have facilities, have places to skate. Vert was my thing. Transition was my thing. I'd never had it. We had the skate park in Coffs Harbour for 14 seconds, and I broke my knee. We had the Ridge Street ramp here for a while. We had Quakers Hill. No, we didn't. We had Cam's Wharf. But we never had our own facility. It was just like not until the bowl got built down at Bar Beach did we have something that I thought nobody can take this away from us, And when was that? It's like 2020 or something.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
No, 2010.
Yeah. It's like 15 years ago or something.
It's interesting.
What year is this? Hang on a minute. What year is this? 2024.
Yeah,
thanks.
It's interesting to think that, so he's been in jail for 30 years. And so much has changed, obviously, in the world with skateboarding and stuff. And then when you think about his crime and you think about when you look at the news every single day, women are still being killed by weird, jealous men every single fucking day. You look at I'm only using this, I'm not pinpointing a location or saying that it's rife there more than anywhere else, but you look at Ballarat in the last 3 months, you know what I mean? 3 women killed? Is it?
I don't watch the news, man.
That's why. I don't watch the news either.
That's why.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Senseless violence against women is still absolutely rife. You cannot read the news without seeing a guy and people say, "Oh, women perpetrate domestic violence too." Well, yeah, sure, and the 0.02% of it. No one's saying that doesn't happen, but you almost cannot read the newspaper. You cannot read a local news website without seeing that little thing happened in our community then, in the skateboarding community 30 years ago. But you look at the broader, it's still happening.
Well, let's look at it from a solution-based approach, like how, as men sitting around having a chat. What can men do to, what's going wrong then? Why is this occurring, and how can it be, I guess, rectified?
Bring your kids up with respect for it's not just women. It's not sexist or racist or religiousist or anything. Just don't be a dick. Bring your kids up. Just don't be a dick, and to anyone ever. Your grandparents, your aunties and uncles, your teachers, the person who parks you in at the shops. Just chill out, and don't be a dick. It's not. They're just so. Everyone's got a. It's not any different. But we haven't had a Vietnam. We haven't had a Second World War. We haven't had a First World War. We got nothing to complain about.
The frail ego thing, though, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's that.
Yeah. My trauma and my this and my that. It's like, well, I don't know, go outside.
And the idea that women owe men something, I think that's a big thing too. Where there's this thing where guys are kind of
I can't get my head. I just don't.
I'm furious that they can't.
Yeah.
And it's like, it always spins me out when you look at social media and stuff. And there's something, I don't know, anything kind of combat sport, anything. And as soon as there's a woman involved, there'll be guys commenting in there. And it's like the weird mental gymnastics that guys will do to want to be able to hit a woman or something. It's insane. It's like one of the reasons I don't go on social media much these days is just like,
I can't.
That's an illness. Why are you even thinking about that?
Yeah, I can't. I just don't. I don't know where that comes from. I can't speak about it.
Is it a knock on from the generations beforehand, where it was much more sexist and misogynist? You know, like the fathers and the grandfathers grew up in that era of, you know, where the man was the man that went out and worked and the woman stayed home, and it was more like it wasn't spoken about, and it was more not acceptable but just more rife, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then those behaviours are then passed on to the children, and maybe it's going to take generations to kind of like I don't know, like breed out or something. I'm just thinking.
No,
am I explaining myself right?
No, I know.
Yeah, you are, yeah.
It's exactly my son said to me something about just we've only spoken a couple of times about it in the last few months, but when the yes vote didn't get up, we talked about it, and like for us it's a no-brainer. We're like, thankfully our little electorate was one of the few in Australia that had a yes majority. But he said, like, it's one of those things. It's just going to be, there has to be a couple of generations of people still to pass on before it's watered down enough, before that entrenched bigotry and colonialism and that stuff that's really, it's not teaching. It's not like a dogma, like teaching religion or something like that. It's just these insidious little things that get done and said around children that they just grow up with, and they become beliefs. And then when push comes to shove, those beliefs come out, and it'll take another couple of generations for it to water down so much. I definitely think we're moving the right way. I feel, I do. Okay. I definitely think we're moving the right way. We've got I work in a school with kids between year 5 and year 8, behaviour school kids, like the kids that can't really work anywhere in mainstream. And if we'd have had a kid even remotely like on a gendered, like, diverse spectrum, even remotely looking or behaving like that 15 years ago when I first started, they would not have survived. Like, literally, the demographic of those kids, they probably wouldn't have even got to school.
Gotcha.
Now it's like it's part of their dialogue, it's part of their language, it's accepted, it's
supported.
It's supported in a way, I guess. Like, they just, I get asked by I've got a Teachers Federation rainbow lanyard for my keys I wear on my pants, and every new batch of kids go, "Are you gay?" And I'm like, I don't know. So I say sometimes, and that just confounds them. But like, it just wouldn't have happened 15 years ago. That just people wouldn't have been. That kids wouldn't have had that. So what I'm saying is, you're talking about Lower Hunter, some of the areas where these kids come from, where there's just generational, like, poverty and lack of education, and it's, that's a whole nother conversation. But those are the kids that are coming into our school, and they're changing, they're different, and that's only a decade and a half. Yeah. So I believe, and I see my son and his friends, they're in their early 20s, and they're the blueprint for the next generation of. They're not motivated to get into changing the world, politics and stuff, but they would have friends that are.
But they're aware.
They are. Oh, they are so aware. Yeah. They're really switched on, and they can have those conversations with each other. We couldn't. Like, I don't know about you growing up with your mates, but we just didn't have big conversations. It's like,
God, no.
Who nicked my beer? That's about.
Yeah, I mean, it took me to my late 30s, early 40s before I started not caring and opening up.
Yeah, right.
And it's become so important to me.
Yeah.
To
obviously.
Yeah, it really has. It really has. I feel
it's amazing.
I feel a deep sense of purpose with it, but it's I think too, when you've been, I guess, touched by suicide as well. And then that's when my eyes really became open and went, oh man, it's the conversations that aren't being had that are killing people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, but empathetic conversations, just like trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes, it can just make all the difference. And it's not that hard, and I know everyone's talking about it, but I love what you're saying about the culture is improving. It is changing. It's just going to be slow.
It is.
And one thing I do want to add on the back of the yes and no vote, I think what a lot of, working in the public education system where we're presented with the full spectrum of our society and its diversity and in a position where we, have to be empathetic and supportive to meet these students' best interests, I think a lot of people don't realize that the children we're teaching aren't too far removed from the stolen generation, and it's this intergenerational trauma. You see it. Like, I mean, you would have as well. I've taught kids whose grandparents were stolen children. Yeah. Now, what do you think the conversations have been in their family gatherings over dinner? Yeah. And they're passing on the pain and the hurt and the suffering that they endured and the removal and there's those little children that hear these conversations and feel that pain or absorb it through domestic abuse that's perpetuated by alcoholism that's numbing the pain that they're suffering. It's passed on into their genes as far as I'm concerned. And it's just going to take time.
It will.
And that's why people are like, oh, why can't we just move forward and just get on with it? Fuck. That's what we are. That's what we're doing.
We are doing
this is
that.
What it takes is to keep talking about it.
Well,
Anyway, there's my rant for the day.
Well, no, it's a good, but it's a good one, and it's. I put myself in this weird position. I had this massive paradigm shift the other day. I was teaching some kids like the timeline of Australian Aboriginal, the Australian Aboriginal culture in Australia, and I did a timeline on the board, and I did it as to scale as I could. And you've got 80,000 years ago, for want of a better date, Aboriginal people came here, and then nothing else happened at all for like 60,000, like 5,000 years ago is the pyramids, 2,000 years ago, Jesus Christ, for, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In our culture. And then in the next little bit, and on the timeline, you couldn't make, well, you could, okay, it would be like the length of Beaumont Street if you wanted to be able to measure from the colonial First Fleet to today, that's how long the scale would have to be for you to measure the distance on that timeline.
Gotcha.
Aboriginal people have been here forever, and you can't measure on the timeline from when the First Fleet got here, and that's all we know. That's all we know. Yeah. Our colonial life in this place is immeasurably small. Now, wow, I sat here and I was having these really good conversations with some Aboriginal kids, and we were talking about, that's why I was having this lesson. I go up into the New England, and I have this connection because my mum came from the New England area, and I go anywhere where there's mountains. I go inland to the Southern Highlands. I have a connection. My family have only been here, I don't know, 100 years at best. So it would be pretty much exactly 100 years my grandfather's family came out here. And I feel this funny, like, connection to this place. How do you can't even comprehend how connected those people feel to this place. They've been here 80,000 years. 80,000 years.
Yeah.
Like they saw Sydney Harbour fill up with water.
Yeah.
That's and so when I had that, I had this epiphany. It's like I feel this really strong bond to my mother's country town.
Yeah.
And her family's been here 100 years. So you can't describe that to people. It's like,
wow.
No wonder. And what you're saying, I see it. I see the effects of it every day, and it's so difficult to talk to people and say, and to try and explain intergenerational trauma. It's so difficult to, I know it's there. I know it's there. I see it every single day. Oh, why aren't your kids attending school? Because their parents grew up in a place where if you sent your kids to school, they might not come home again because someone will come and rip them out of their seat and take them somewhere. That's why their kids don't go to school, because they're terrified of sending them anywhere where they can't see them. And 80,000 years of their culture, they learned in those groups, and we had a really, really lovely guy called Joey came and did some stuff at our school, and he used to come in every Thursday and he would do Aboriginal pedagogy, and you would do craft activities, and you would do kinetic stuff, and you'd play sport, and you'd tell stories, and that's education.
Yeah.
And it works. Why did 15 behaviour school kids sit and listen to him all in a group, do the activities, listen to his... Why? Because that's what education looks like. It's diverse. You're adapting to the needs of the kids. You're changing activities. You're doing physical things. You're telling stories. There's integrated into the whole thing.
Yeah.
Was an Aboriginal pedagogy, and it worked really well with the most marginalised students that we have in our system.
Dude.
So, it's not just about why do we have bushfires every 3 years. Aboriginal people have been getting it right in this setting for 80,000 years. Just stop and think about why they don't fit in, why they feel marginalised. What can we learn from? It's not one size fits all. It's you can't do what we do. That's just not their culture. It's 80,000 years of something they've been doing it that way, and we've tried to fix it, change it, bang it into them and if you can, it's not just Aboriginal kids. If you develop an education system that works like that, it works for everyone, absolutely everyone.
Well, man, the proof is in the pudding because, even on the podcast, I don't know how many people I've said to, how do you reflect on your school years? And every single one, I hated school. It's very rare I hear someone go, I love my school years.
Yeah.
Like every now and then I do, but most of the time. And kids aren't designed to be in four walls.
No.
And education should be unstructured and messy.
Yeah.
Like you were saying.
Yeah.
Like less structure, more mess.
Yeah.
Particularly
in those early years. And it's getting to the point like my son's mates, if they went to university, they dropped out. COVID was obviously a big factor in their little world. Heaps of positive stuff came out of COVID. Like kids don't have to go to school. They'll still, you can teach a kid the curriculum an hour a day on the internet.
Homeschool, let's go.
Yeah, and I like the kids. I think kids get a lot out of being at school, but that's social stuff that you learn to be in a group, learn to get along with other people, learn to problem solve, learn to be curious. You do that in a group. But the actual curriculum, you can deliver that to a kid an hour a day from anywhere in the world, and they'll get the same information and learn the same stuff. Bring it to school, ask a teacher or an advisor or whatever you call that person that runs that, facilitates that thing. But kids need to be at school kids need to be in groups to develop social skills because that's what we are. We're a society.
Yeah.
So you can't not have school. And I think kids that are only homeschooled.
So you think you can't not have school?
I think you can't.
Okay.
I shouldn't say it's because school's such a loaded word. You can't not have a place where kids go and get. But I think they can figure that out for themselves, how that looks and how that operates, and who's in what. The kids are great at that. We're humans are good at that. We look at who we want to be around and we join that group, whatever it is, an interest or a style of fashion, whatever it is. But if you let them do that, they'll get more out of it, and it'll be heaps easier for you to manage. But they're social things. They're like arty things. They're problem solving things. They're not, we don't need to. It's not chalk and talk. We do not have all the information. Teachers do not have all the information.
But
the information that phone has all the information.
Exactly.
And Jim
Jim
Turvey has all the information.
There's Google, there's YouTube, and there's Jim.
About a very small, unimportant subsection of the earth.
No, but I love that. Like, I've often said it, like, teachers are obsolete these days. Like, the kids can literally find everything they want, and then they can get the assignment done with ChatGPT. Let's face it.
Yeah.
So what are we teaching them? We need to be teaching them how to learn. Like, a lot of teachers know this, but do you find, like, to actually implement that in the structures that we're placed under, it's really uninspiring and challenging when you've still got to, meet like syllabus outcomes and things like that.
I'm absolutely, it's really hard for me to answer that properly because of the context I'm in. I grew up, I spent 15 years under a boss that just thought so far outside the square that you couldn't even see the square.
That's
like
epic.
100%. It was like there was not even a square. Like we were so far out of the box, it was ridiculous. So I grew up as a teacher in that kind of framework where I just, what do you call that? It's outside the box, but I was in a framework. That's funny. But I grew up in that, learning to be a teacher in a place where there was no boundaries, where I was just told, you have to engage these children. They don't, she used to say, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. And that's how I teach. If I build a relationship, when the kids are curious and they want to actually, when they respect you enough to listen to what you say, that might take term 1.
Yes.
Then you start teaching. And then term 3, you might bang as much curriculum into them as you can. You build their skill base, because that's what it's about. It's like you need to be able to read, you need to be able to do social level maths, regardless of where you come from or where you're going. That's what you need to be able to do.
Yeah.
But you can re-engage kids with education without doing anything like that for 2 terms. I've done it over and over again. And you get kids that leave you and go on back to mainstream, back to high school, and they go, oh, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah, but also like you've nurtured the individual and you've given them the opportunity to discover who they are. And that's, in my opinion, after doing this for a while and also teaching at a progressive high school for a while, that was kind of, adhered to somewhat of like a Steiner approach. Mm-hmm. I really do believe the most important outcome is that individual leaving with self-confidence, self-belief, and a good understanding of who they are, what their strengths and weaknesses are. And I always reflect on my experience over high school. I left feeling low self-esteem because I was thought I was dumb because I didn't get the grades, it took me years to rebuild that self-confidence, like years. Like I lost years because of it. Yeah. So that should be, and I just think like from that, like 12 to 18, oh God, they must be the most important years of a human's life. Like so developmental in terms of like, not just physically, but emotionally as well. But like you said, the system is changing, but we're just beating the confidence out of so many kids. And
and it's just so, it's on a day-to-day, get up, go to school, spend 6 hours a day at school and come home thing. It's just not giving them what they need. And it's filling in time. It's like getting kids back to school from COVID was like, oh man, this is so, it's such a, it's kind of really inconvenient having these kids at home because, that's what it's about. It's the industrial world can't have kids just, there's no aunties and uncles to, before the Industrial Revolution, you learnt your thing out in the field or out in wherever you were with your family and your family members and your community and your village. That was education. And then everyone had to go off to work in a factory. Well, what are we going to do with all these kids? I don't know. Chuck them in school.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's, come on, guys, that's 200 years ago.
That's what's happening now.
It is.
bro.
It is what's happening now. That's what I'm saying, and And I think COVID taught us that. They were challenging times. Being at home with your kids, but it worked. We were there. We got through it. So I'm just saying, There's other ways of doing it than what we're doing now, and it was proven by
COVID.
months and months and months of homeschool.
Yeah,
teaching,
exactly. My friend, his daughter's in homeschool, and he said that they've got a little community of homeschoolers. So, they share the load with the other parents, and one parent will take them for the morning, another parent will take them for the afternoon, and they rotate it, and so the kids are still getting that socialization. Because what I always find interesting is like we're entrusting strangers with our most precious resource or our most precious thing, our children, and we're just leaving them with a stranger for 6 hours a day. And they're having the predominant influence on them.
They are.
As I become, and the longer I'm a teacher like you, I actually take my role more and more serious.
Seriously,
when I was fresh out of uni, I was like, I'm going to be teacher, and I was really motivated. But as I get on, I'm like, this shit's actually pretty serious. I'm not gonna take any time with these children for granted, and I owe it to their parents, and I owe it to the kid. Like every single time I'm with them.
Yeah. It's very heavy. Yeah. I feel the same way.
We can talk all night.
You can. It's a weird place to be. There's more people like you need to be in teaching, but then
Likewise, bro.
Well, you know what I mean, though. It's just when you see every kid as a person that needs what you've got, that your experiences, they're the things. We have life experiences, we have stories, we have stuff that you can tell kids, and they will accept that if you treat them with respect, if you treat them like a human being that's in your care, and you think about it at the end of the day. It's what I think to myself every single day at work. It's not about you. It's about them. Stop with your, I don't know, how many slices of cheese. It's about them. You're here. You're getting paid to do a really important job. You get paid for this, so don't worry. It's not about you. It's about them. So take their needs on board. They're the person that's coming in, and you have to treat every single one of them like something that if you drop it, it will break.
Oh, bro. Jim, what do you think of this, Jim? How's this guy, man?
Sitting here as somebody that obviously isn't an educator.
Well, you are.
I taught creative writing at uni for a semester. And I work in a library. But no, listening to the two of you talk just then, if there's one thing that I love more than researching old skateboarding stuff, it's honestly listening just to the way that people work and the way that like our community works, and especially being a fairly new father as well, listening to the two of you talk about this kind of thing is really, really inspiring, and it's really important to me. So it's cool. So thank you for letting me sit in on it as well.
Bro, but we need more skaters as teachers, right? That's the key. That's the key.
I think so.
Yeah. Anyway, listen, it's been so epic. Sean, how you feeling, man? It's a long conversation.
Yeah, I'm 2/3 of my mind's down 4 different rabbit holes.
That's what happens.
It is. Yeah, it's amazing how you start somewhere and then you're somewhere else altogether, and you can't even remember where you started. And but yeah, it's been fabulous.
Awesome.
What a wonderful experience to sit and talk about this stuff.
But listen, I said this to Jim as well. It's like there's what you want to say, and then there's what you actually say, and then afterwards there'll be what you wish you said. And but it just comes out how it's meant to come out.
Yeah, there's not enough days in the week, is there? You can't sit and do a 4-day podcast.
I think the important thing of going into any kind of interview or discussion or anything like that when it's open like this is not having too much of an agenda. Unless, obviously, you want to be, when I say agenda, you want to be positive. You want to speak the truth or your truth, because everybody's truth is different. But, not going into it with this kind of, a manifesto or anything like that. I think sometimes when you interview somebody and they have this kind of, that they've almost rehearsed in their head too much. Some of those interviews are really awkward. But sitting back just then and listening to you two talk, that's just genuine conversation. And to me, that stuff is any kind of interviewer will always say, I think that's some of the best stuff. And I tell Shan all the time since we've met that he's, as far as I'm concerned, he's a journalist. He didn't think he was when we first met, but they're the kind of best conversations you get out of people is when you just let it flow like that, because you do get those kind of intrinsic truths, I think.
Thanks, man. Actually, how do you feel about independent media? Because, I mean, with the advent of all these amazing podcasts out there, there's so many. You know, this is like the new media. I really believe it. Like, you know, podcasts like Joe Rogan is now that's mainstream media. It's not commercial media.
I think it goes back to the word that we used before, an agenda. So if you're going into something with, say, like a right-wing bias,
You're
right, and that's your agenda to spread that, then you're almost kind of, you know, no matter what side of politics you're leaning on, if you're going into that with that agenda, you can never speak the absolute truth because you're already going into it skewing something to suit your wants and your needs and the way that you think society should be. That's where I think the danger is.
But everyone's going to do that in some way.
Of course, and everybody already does, and there's already always been a media bias as well.
Do you think people can do it though? They have to be really conscious in not doing that. Is that what you're saying? Is that the markings of a good independent media?
I think I think it goes back to the consumer as well, knowing how to take something, and also, you know, as far as being a consumer, knowing the level of the quality of what you're consuming. For a long time, I know, say with my parents' generation, you know, my mum's a really, really smart woman, but I know when I was younger there'd be certain things, it was in the paper. Now, of course, anything that's in the paper is not an objective truth, but because that was the only platform that was available to anybody, and that was the only thing, well, you know, aside from television, print media and televised media were really the two main streams of, you know, news sources. They were just kind of like it was a given.
Yeah.
Now we can't avoid it. You turn on your phone, you log in to get the spam in your emails even. You can't even get essentially checking your mail now. You know, there was leaflets before, but it's different now. And they can be disguised as other things. So it's being able to, I think, a true, like the real skill, and I think this is a really important skill for all humans moving forward into the next stage that we're going into now with everything, the progress of technology, is having the ability to filter those things and understanding what is real, what is subjective, and what's objective. I think that's a really, really important skill, and I think it's a skill I don't know. Look, I'm not the one out of the three of us that's in education at the moment, but I think that's something that's really important to teach the next generation, is to how to discern what is what's subjective and what's objective in the news.
I agree, but I think people are too lazy. They want everything fed to them. They can get everything fed to them in terms of the information they consume, and they don't want to have to be proactive in discerning whether it's, you know, real, objective, subjective. You know, like you said, it is a skill to be developed, but I just feel like people are too lazy these days to do it. But that sounds pessimistic or whatever.
No, it doesn't necessarily.
Do you know what I mean?
No,
I don't reckon. I just feel like, and you're right, I agree with what you're saying. So,
and I think our parents grew up in an age where media was honest and respected and trusted, and it's, you know, I think the really early decades of print media and TV media did their best, you know, especially government channels that didn't have to sell advertising. They're trying to give you the news because, you know, that was how information was spread around. And I really think, like 50 years ago, media was honest and professional and respected and trusted. And so the next few generations, and it's only, I reckon, your kid, my kid, you know, the last, say someone who's 30, it's only that generation of people who have grown up in this world where they actually need to be taught, do not trust that. Don't trust that. Like it's not even, don't even think about thinking that it's real. Because like, and I said this, I think recently to you, it's, if I haven't seen it myself, and it hasn't directly affected me and I haven't actually seen it, I just don't believe it. If someone tells me something, I go, cool, that's cool. Well, good on you for knowing that or feeling that or seeing that or thinking that or whatever.
Because I did a McTwist at Bar Beach yesterday, but there was no one there.
No one there. I hate it when that happens.
Insane.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah, and I grabbed Indy too.
Yeah.
And I never grab backside. It's weird.
Yeah.
I actually never skated at all when anybody else is around. It's really weird.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? It's like
Yes, Jim.
if you can't, you cannot trust any form of disseminated information these days. Like it's like this is a conversation, but I don't know. I might leave here and you might turn everything backwards and I end up
Quick
saying,
Or seriously, like AI, I could generate an AI co-host.
yeah,
Right? Like Jim doesn't even need to be here.
Yeah.
But then I could say Jim was here.
Yeah.
Like, got a sample. That's seriously what the fuck's happening.
yeah. And here I am. I'm seeing this, so I know it happened. And if you hear it back, I'll go, oh yeah, that actually happened.
Unless the pizza had LSD in it.
What?
No,
didn't?
just psilocybin, those mushrooms. Yeah. Anyway, listen, it's been epic. Sean, is there anything else you want to say? Have you got everything out? Have I missed anything?
Oh gosh.
I've been asking everyone that lately because I've had a few people go, I should have talked about this person or that person, and I just want to shout out someone.
Yeah, I think really I could have started with "Don't be a dick" and finished with "Don't be a dick," and that would have been all I needed to say. I'm honestly, the opportunity to do this and have this heard, be with someone like intelligent people talking about stuff, particularly skateboarding, which I love, and it is who I am. And it's taken us down it's taken us from drainage ditches in Coffs Harbour to dead girlfriends in surfboard bags. That's a dark highway, but they're good conversations to have. They're important things. They are important things. And your life is, I'm just about experiences, I think. And I think people get so trapped in possessions and money and status and I just think it's just a hard place. I just don't understand it. It's just about experiences, and then you die. Then you literally, you're just here for a bit and you do this thing and then you die. So while you're here, be positive, have great experiences. The people that you love them completely. If you have children, bring them up to be better than you are, not any other way than that. And that I think now I feel like I've said too much, but that's at the end of the day, that's it. That's the life of the rant of a one-eyed skateboarder. I feel like just don't be a dick.
That's beautiful, bro. Thank you, Mr. Gravel Burns, everybody. Sean Mussett.